Welcome to the Auditorium for the regular council meeting scheduled for Monday, February 13th. And we'll start off by calling the meeting to order and ask for an introduction of late items. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Add item 6B, delegations pertaining to agenda items, Ms. Andrea Blakeman and Mr. Dean Forsyth regarding staff report on Old City R1 zone and proposed amendments to zoning bylaw 4500. Add item 6C, delegations pertaining to agenda items, Mr. Matthew O'Donnell regarding report on Occupy Nanaimo costs. Add item 6D, delegations pertaining to agenda items, Mr. Jess Anderson regarding report on Occupy Nanaimo costs. Add item 7A, Mayor's report, announcement regarding renaming of Green Nanaimo Awards categories. Delete item 11H1, staff reports, property maintenance bylaw 1990, number 3704 for 519 Rose Hill Street.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I was going to say thanks so much. Are there any other lead items first?
Yes, Your Worship.
Go ahead, please.
I have a request from Jennifer O'Rourke to be added as an agenda item as a delegation on an item not on the agenda at the end of the agenda for 5 minutes.
Second motion.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any other lead items?
Your Worship, I'd like to move up items 20, A, B, and C. I'm offering it to all of them because one of them has to return to Vancouver, and I just believe it's fair to have all three of them moved forward to come after delegations.
Okay, moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ms. Harrison, that'll come under item 6 after, I guess, 6E almost, really, will it? Okay, now, Councillor Besser? Yep. As amended? Okay, seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And move into the adoption of the minutes as circulated.
Move adoption of minutes of January 23rd is circulated.
Second.
Move and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's no presentations, and we'll move into delegations pertaining to agenda items. And you have up to 10 minutes on this. And the first one is delegations pertaining to the 2012-2016 financial plan. Welcome, sir.
My name is Fred Taylor of 204 Emery Way. I understand we have an assessment authority that creates value on land and improvements, and a municipal government that creates a need for some funds. And the two of them worked, one's related to the other, to create taxation on individual properties for the land value and the improvements. I've spoken before that containers are not assessed, create no value to us. And a year ago, the council put a moratorium on it at the request of staff not to do anything about them. They're now getting galore in the city. I understand the weight is to try and gather people together that support them. But just a minute. You did entertain the question. He adopted zoning bylaw 4500 last summer. Same words. Everybody had a chance to speak to it. So I believe it's time this council give direction to get rid of stuff that's not generating taxation. Lift that moratorium, and there's no such game as, oh, we allowed them to sit there for the year and they're now legal non-conforming. Not right. It's time that these things, eyesores, were cleaned up in our city and allowed as per where the zoning allows, and saves the assessment authority when they see a bunch of them having to go to court to try and get them assessed to get some value for us. They don't generate income in the way of taxation. So why think of what you could generate if people had to add on to their big box store, construction jobs, sale of building materials, all kinds of things anywhere in the city. If their building isn't big enough, build it, we get taxes. You're in the same view of lowering and making it more acceptable for industry and commercial in the city by lowering their tax rates. Why are we allowing them to have containers from shipping companies sitting on their property, no taxation? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, is there anyone else that, it is a good point, that want to speak to matters related? What we're dealing with here is the 2012-2016 financial plan.
Ron Boland, 3165 King Richard Drive, Mayor Rutan and councillors. Before you pass 3 readings of the financial plan bylaw tonight, thus filling that mold with cement, which, though it may not be fully set until April, becomes harder to rework with each passing day, I would like to ask that you give more consideration to this plan and to the hardships which it may offer to many, if not most, citizens of Nanaimo. For as long as memory serves me, Council has approved budget increases which have considerably exceeded the increase in the BC Consumer Price Index. This year, that increase is currently set at 3.8% for residential taxpayers, compared to a BC cost of living increase of 1.7%. Other than the brief discussion of adding an internal auditor, a position that frankly, in the light of the imminent appointment of a municipal auditor for the province, seemed a straw man or woman in any event, and was subsequently cut, I remember no serious discussion of the $160 million budget which is set before you tonight. Neither do I remember hearing, prior to staff's introduction of this budget submission, that Council had provided any direction to staff in its preparation. This is unfortunate and is exacerbated by the fact that on at least 2 occasions at which I have been present, attempts by individuals on Council to discuss such matters were promptly quashed by other Council members who raised points of order indicating that their venues were not the place for the discussion of such matters. Where is the place and the time in which these matters of vital public interest are discussed, and what is the public's right to be party to them? Without getting into budgetary details, I would like to request that you review some budget issues which have apparently been ignored. The first is the matter of the old city annex. For most of us, deciding to build a new home rather than renovating our old one involves prior planning on what we'll do with the old one, as this decision is vital to our financial statements needed to obtain a mortgage. While the new annex rises and the old one is to be emptied by the end of this year, where is the financial plan for this depreciating asset which will, even if empty, consume at least heating and maintenance dollars? Nanaimo's residential and business taxpayers are required to have an all-encompassing plan when we want a new home. Why does the city ignore the existing real estate in our 5-year plan? We've also had considerable discussion about the need for some $65 to $75 million for a new water supply to meet the demand of future growth. You've recently authorized the expenditure of up to $560,000 for a study of a possible new dam site at a location which is owned privately, additionally is apparently contested under the Douglas Treaty, and further is apparently not the preferred option in any event. This is a lot of high-stakes taxpayer money to be spending in an environment which appears to be about as ambiguous as it can get. Statistics Canada's 2011 population data for Nanaimo removes nearly 4,000 people from the informal estimates which have been used for the city for that same time period in discussing the need for a new water source. Perhaps we should use the time to reduce the risky ambiguities associated with growth before we charge ahead as we have sometimes done in the past. An equally important consideration in the development of such a major project to serve the needs of the yet to come is how it should be funded. It has been repeatedly stated that the new water source is needed to accommodate anticipated growth and are not needed for our existing population, nor for another 16,000 people yet to come. Let alone resolve the question of whether we can afford growth. Why in the plan is there no discussion of the need to increase development cost charges to recover the anticipated costs associated with that growth? Are present taxpayers expected to pay for new growth? Have you heard of any old established business which pays people to use its services and yet is not in ultimately dire straits? And last but not least, there is a question which looms over all: the cost of maintaining the infrastructure which we already have. The last estimate I heard for the City of Nanaimo's assets was $1.8 billion with a B dollars. With new annexes, Bowen Road widenings, the coming new water treatment plant, a possible dam, other gleams in Council's eye, such as tax exemptions, fast ferries, and multiplex, etc., which are still on hold. Well, maybe not the tax exemption, which forms part of tonight's vote on the financial plan. Where do our assets stand now? And how do we propose to maintain all of them? I've heard estimates that we are deficient by about $12 million a year in meeting the maintenance demands of our infrastructure. When will the hammer fall on these expenses, which are accumulating and compounding as time goes on? This financial plan needs much more discussion, much more transparency, and orientation to the problems which we know are coming our way. Please take time to do proper due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, are there any other delegations that would like to speak to matters related to the 2012-2016 financial plan? Seeing none, we'll move into the next item, 6B. Ms. Andrea Blakeman and Mr. Dean Forsyth, on behalf of the Nanaimo Old City Association, NOCA, regarding the staff report to the Old City Quarter R1 zone and proposed amendments zoning bylaw 4500. Welcome, ma'am.
Can you even hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I have a copy of what I'm going to read. Would you like it now or after?
No, read it for us if you want, because if you want to circulate it, then we maybe not have to have you read it then, you see.
Okay, fair enough.
Your choice.
I have pictures to go along with this. So I'd like to quickly outline what the Nanaimo Old City Association wishes to protect by requesting the changes to the R1 section under consideration. A neighborhood of character and heritage homes, established gardens, and a place where we know our neighbors. Children and parents play hockey in the lanes, and you really can go next door and borrow a cup of sugar. I'm just going to show you some photos of where we live and the kind of community that we have down here. All these homes are within the R1 section that we're talking about trying to preserve. In the spring of 2011, based on neighbors' concerns about the proposed development at 952 Wentworth, we took on an Old City neighborhood survey asking the single-family area about their feelings on this sort of development. A clear majority, 2/3 of the separate residents interviewed, approximately half of the residences in the area, were opposed to the subdivision of 952. Council listened and rejected the subdivision. Thank you. At this time, the draft zoning bylaws were nearing completion. The Neighborhood Association was concerned about how the new zoning would affect the neighborhood, and in particular, the single-family R1 zone. The new bylaw principally applied to single-family areas. At the public hearing prior to adoption of bylaw 4500, NOCA submitted a request to return to the previous zoning bylaw 4000. In particular, we wanted the following: a return to 600 square meter minimum lot size, no reduced lot size on lane access, no duplex on corner lots with lots of 700 to 1,000 meters square, no accessory buildings with suites higher than 4.5 or 5.5 meters. And there was discussion around considering some type of venue to reinforce form and character of any new or redevelopment within the R1 area. The Council of the Day directed staff to address NOCA's concerns. The NOCA board members met with city staff on 3 occasions, and city conducted their own survey of the R1 area, the results of which showed approximately 2/3 of the owners responding, a quarter of the residents in total in that area, wanted to return to the old bylaw 4000 zoning. After much consultation between city staff and NOCA board members, we agreed to a reduction in the R1 zoning area to a minimum lot size of 500 meters squared, as well as the removal of the 450-meter minimum lot size with lane access, and the lowering of the minimum height allowance for accessory buildings containing a secondary suite from the 7 meters to 4.5 or 5.5 meters in the Old City neighborhood. The next 2 pictures will give you an idea. Privacy, food production, views of neighborhood and character are a few of the reasons for lowering the height. So this is not an atypical yard in the R1 zoning area. As you can see, food gardens, berry canes, apples, pears, peaches. This is, like I said, not atypical. This one has chickens too. City staff had Council, to support this change in reduction of accessory buildings, we strongly encourage city to support this change in reduction of accessory buildings. To increase the height beyond that 4.5 or 5.5 meter height will have a detrimental effect that will not be alterable at a later date. If you have a look at the next few photos of 281 McClary and 65 Milton, I think that will give you a visual. This is a project that was rejected a couple of years ago and is now being built. 281 McClary has a suite in the body of the home, and if you see on the far right, that is the second accessory building being built. So that's the view from McClary Street. This is the alley. Two-car garage. I assume there will be a large deck. So that's the house on the right and the secondary suite on the left. And unfortunately, the people that live on the left side, on the north side of this building, will have no sun in their backyard. They wanted a vegetable garden. Good luck. It is unfortunate that there was not a moratorium during this decision-making time. The last slide here that I'm going to show you this is a front view of the 65 Milton. This is the front view from Milton Street. The left-hand building is 85 Milton. The right-hand building is a secondary suite at the back of the property, which is technically speaking another property. Not sure what's going on upstairs. The right-hand building, the partial building there is 85 Milton and 65 Milton on the left. That's the alley. So it's as close as it can get on the lot line on 2 sides. And this is the 65 Milton accessory building, and as you can see, the home next door on the north-hand side has no sun. This is an excellent example of a family putting in an accessory building that respects both the neighborhood and the neighbors. There's a garage and a suite, and that's currently under construction. City staff had previously supported a ban on corner lot duplexes in the recent submission to PNAC. While their recommendations were passed, there was a subsequent proviso to allow duplexes after all. Duplexes do not fit in this R1 area. This is an example of a duplex, a single-story duplex on Campbell Street within the R1 area, complete with the usual litany of cars. This is also on Campbell Street. This was a fourplex until quite recently. It is now a giant duplex on a very large lot in an area with heritage and character homes. The creation of legislation for new intensive residential development permit areas and associated design guidelines we tend to support. However, it will take a great deal of time to implement, and in the interim, we must deal with the immediate needs around the zoning in the R1 area. We encourage the city to work with Anoka and the residents of the area to allow the Old City neighborhood to maintain the character and the charm of the Old City for future generations. While change is inevitable, well-planned and timely change is prudent to keeping the integrity of any neighborhood. I'm just going to show you a couple of slides of homes that clearly don't fit. Oops. Pardon me, apparently I have one. We do understand that in coming years, population density may become an issue, but with the current sprawl and size of Nanaimo as it is, we simply aren't there. The 2006 census counted 78,692 people in Nanaimo and only 83,810 in 2011, an increase of just over 5,000 people in over 5 years. No demonstrable need for increased density at this time. During the same time, the regional district went from 144,000, slightly over, to 46,500 people, 146,500 people in 2011. Increasing density with no regard for long-term effects of an established area of character and heritage homes is a mistake if we do indeed value our history and our neighborhoods. It's clearly evident that where the Old City neighborhood residents' interests lie, in preservation of the character and ambiance of our neighborhood. As one of the PNAC members succinctly stated, one size does not fit all when dealing with rules, regulations, bylaws. Neighborhoods are not created the same. We do want to preserve our heritage in this very authentic neighborhood, and we sincerely hope you will support this as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome.
Your questions, so don't leave yet.
Okay.
Councillor Batchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Ms. Bregman.
You're welcome.
When you and Mr. Reaper, the author of this letter that we received today, attended...
Oh, no, not this one. This is not what I read to you.
February the 13th.
Okay, yeah, this is not the same letter?
That's not the same?
No, okay. I had nothing, I haven't fully read that letter.
Even apart from that.
Okay.
When the two of you were present at the Plan Nanaimo Advisory Committee meeting,
yes,
where it was being discussed what we would do about the heights for secondary ancillary buildings and the 500 square meter lots. At that point, I asked you if you and Mr. Reaper could live with the recommendations before they were voted on.
Correct.
And I think I got a pretty emphatic yes from both of you.
With the exception of the
With the
duplexes.
exception of the duplexes.
Correct,
so that
you did.
is leading to my question, which is that other than the question of duplexes, we're okay with this?
Yes.
Thank you, and if I may have a follow-up, Your Worship. Could I ask staff, Mr. Tucker possibly, to explain the possibilities of duplexes that are not a duplex, in the sense that it's not one building?
Your Worship, the amendments to the zoning bylaw permit two freestanding single-family dwellings on a duplex lot that is currently zoned for duplexes. There is a housekeeping amendment coming forward in tonight's agenda which would allow the same provision for a corner lot which allows duplexes. The idea being that the two single-family dwellings would be more in keeping with a single-family neighborhood than a larger building, which is a duplex in the traditional sense of the word duplex.
Thank you. And Your Worship, may I have one follow-up? In In that same vein, then, Mr. Tucker, could you explain in layman's term what an intensive residential development permit area means and how we might be able to control that kind of development with duplexes that are not duplexes?
Yes, Your Worship. The legislation which allowed us to control the form and character of buildings used to apply only to commercial, multifamily, and industrial buildings. The legislation has changed, and it's allowed for the creation of what they refer to as intensive residential development. This is for infill situations, and it would allow council, through development permits, to control the form and character of single-family dwellings and duplexes, as well as multifamily, commercial, and industrial.
In other words, that might be a way for us to control.
Yes, within our recommendation to council is the recommendation to continue working with NOCA to develop a set of guidelines that would speak to intensive residential development.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Okay, we have Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, I just went through to the delegation, and thank you very much for your input. I know a lot of those houses from the Old City neighborhood, and they're beautiful homes. Two of your concerns are massing of these buildings that are being put in, the size of them,
Correct.
and the form and character.
Correct. Height specifically, as far as an accessory building.
Interesting enough for some of the buildings, the older accessory buildings there are miners' cottages. They were single-story small buildings. Some of the houses were built under a regime of a lot higher than we currently have.
Correct.
Upwards of 9 meters in some of the housing. So.
Yes, some of them are very tall.
But form and character of these and the sizing, the massing of them is your concern.
Yes.
Do you believe that working towards some residential development permit guidelines would help? Do you understand those?
I think that sort of consultation is really, really healthy, especially in this kind of a neighborhood. I think in our discussions, we're very concerned at the length of time that might happen over, and in part because during the time that the bylaws have changed and the discussion that has ensued, a very, very large two-story accessory building has already gone up across the alley on Milton Street and on McCleary Street. So the length of time, this could take years. I mean, no offense, Andrew, but it could take a long time to actually come to fruition. And in the meantime, we could lose a lot here.
I understand that. I was a young man a long time ago, too. Thank you very much for your input.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for your presentation. Just one quick question. Could you please identify your source for the statistics, the population statistics again for me, please?
They were from the census information that I believe came out from the city.
And you indicated that there was population growth of 5,000 in that...
Slightly over.
Slightly over. And the population that you identified for the year ending 2010 was
2011.
2011.
It was those are statistics that I believe just came out a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Johnston.
Just a quick one, Your Worship, through you to staff. Just a quick question, Andrew, if I may. How many potential corner lots would be available for duplex development?
17, I think.
17, I just heard somebody... Is that the number? Thank you.
Good. Thank
Sorry,
you.
actually, it says 16 here in
16?
my report.
Well, that makes a big change. I just want to say, Andrew, thank you very much for the presentation. I just want to add, staff has indicated, and you've mentioned you've had discussions with our staff about meeting with NOCA. Are you comfortable with that? I mean, are you comfortable with what the city is trying to do to work with you?
To be honest, I've been extremely pleasantly surprised at how great it's been working with staff.
That's great.
It's been a really excellent learning experience, and they've been really helpful and great guides. Great to argue with, too, but it's been really a good experience.
Well, they do try very hard, but
They do.
I'm sure you'll be able to work out something. Thank you very much for your presentation. Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move into the next delegation is Mr. Matthew O'Donnell, Arbutus Avenue, Nanaimo, regarding the report on the costs with Occupy Nanaimo. Welcome, sir. Up to 10 minutes.
My name is Matthew O'Donnell. I'm from Nanaimo, British Columbia. Not a really good public speaker, so I made a lot of notes, so you'll have to excuse me. The City of Nanaimo will be reporting to Council tonight the costs incurred by Occupy Nanaimo's occupation of Diana Krall Plaza from October 15th to December the 9th, 2011. Occupy Nanaimo chose to occupy Diana Krall Plaza to protest the financial inequalities between the upper and lower class while the middle class disappears. We also raised awareness to the issue of homelessness, a very important issue here in Nanaimo, as we have one of the highest unemployment rates in British Columbia and one of the highest child poverty rates in Canada, of which a lot of families living under that poverty line are just one paycheck away from becoming homeless themselves. Occupy Nanaimo also promoted the benefit of unity, where business owners, contractors, employed people, the unemployed, the homeless, and countless others work together as equals in an attempt to raise awareness that change is needed in the world and that it is indeed coming. The City will report to Council tonight that the cost incurred by Occupy Nanaimo is just slightly above $24,000, while noted by Randy Churchill, bylaw manager, that you cannot put a price tag on the damage done to downtown Nanaimo by Occupy Nanaimo. I am here to report to Council my findings on the City report, as well as some notes the City report missed. 3,000 hot meals. That's how many meals Occupy Nanaimo prepared and served to anyone who wanted a meal between October 15th and December 9th at Diana Krall Plaza. Meals of various kinds were generously provided by local restaurants in downtown Nanaimo, but the majority of donations came from members of the general public, supportive to Occupy's cause. Meals were prepared off-site by volunteers in their kitchens and then brought back to Diana Krall Plaza and made available to anyone who needed to eat, often including people not part of Occupy Nanaimo, but just people who can't afford rent, let alone groceries, and just need a hot meal. 3,000 hot meals. This is also something that you cannot put a price tag on, because helping out your fellow human being at a basic human necessity is rewarding in a way words cannot describe. It's priceless. Instant shelter. Not shelter in 6 months, not shelter in 1 week, not shelter in 5 business days. We provided instant shelter to anyone who needed it. We provided sleeping bags, blankets, and tents to anyone who required one, whether they were part of Occupy Nanaimo or you're just in dire need of shelter. The only thing we asked was that you be sober, and most respected our sole rule. To ensure both protesters and people needing shelter kept both sober and safe, we had a zero-tolerance policy of no drugs and alcohol enforced by overnight security and first aid. Our security kept busy, especially on weekends, de-escalating situations with intoxicated bar patrons, and when necessary, calling the RCMP to deal with out-of-control bar patrons to ensure the safety of the demonstrators, who were usually sleeping, to plan for the next day's direct action or a meeting with city workers, not city council. Safe, instant shelter to sober people in need is something that you can also not put a price tag on. Unity. It's a word rarely applied to the real world, especially with the constant us versus them, divide and conquer mentality instilled on us these days through the newspaper, the history books, and the politics performed by the politicians. Occupy Nanaimo proved that unity between people, whether you were rich or poor, white or First Nations, employed or on welfare, teenagers or seniors, unity is the only way you are going to change the world. Through acceptance and new ideas, not rejection and judgment. Unity, positivity, and a true desire for change drove the hundreds of people who put in thousands of volunteer hours to dedicate their time and resources to Occupy Nanaimo, to provide 3,000 hot meals, to provide safe, instant shelter. Unity is also what led us to having a stellar working relationship and communication with the Nanaimo RCMP. Unity is why we stood in solidarity with other Vancouver Island groups to oppose things such as coal mines up island, the continued mismanagement of BC ferries, the logging and clear-cutting of old-growth forests on Cortez Island and here in Lindley Valley, the massive layoffs of union workers at Malaspina Gardens, the federal omnibus and expensive crime bill C-10, and finally the unelected provincial government that needs to show true democracy and call an election now. Unity is also why we were respectful and open to negotiations with the city of Nanaimo. Negotiations with the City of Nanaimo were important and treated very seriously by Occupy Nanaimo. At first, we had high optimism over the fact that the city was willing to sit down and speak with us. We felt positive over the fact that we could deliver our issues, along with local solutions, straight to Mayor John Rattan, and that perhaps together we could bring real positive change to the less fortunate of Nanaimo. While the city quietly compiled a court case going against John Rattan's numerous public, often televised election pledges to keep us fully aware and involved of the legal process, Occupy Nanaimo routinely met with Bylaws Manager Randy Churchill, Ted Swaby, City Manager Al Kenning, and Mayor John Rattan to discuss ways to end the occupation of Diana Krall Plaza. Our position was clear. We will leave when we have seen something done to create positive change within the city, while allowing us to continue trying to create change in solidarity with the global Occupy movement. We also met, and I would bet this is a mutual feeling, to avoid any legal action that would be paid out by the Nanaimo taxpayer. While we hoped the city would not waste such money on legal fees, we saw what was happening in other cities and felt dialogue was our best course of action. It quickly became apparent during our talks that the city was not interested in negotiation, instead offering one option which would not have accomplished any of our goals. This was offered as a take it or leave it fashion. After having several of our compromises rejected, negotiations ceased, and City Council, going by information provided by the City of Nanaimo, voted to proceed in legal action against Occupy Nanaimo, costing Nanaimo taxpayers $18,954. Almost $19,000 wasted in what could have been solved simply by free thinking, open dialogue, and it wouldn't have cost you a penny. Sorry, not you guys, the Nanaimo taxpayers. $19,000 in legal costs. That's how much someone working full-time on minimum wage makes in a year before taxes. Not that many people on minimum wage worked full-time to begin with, but the point remains the same. I find it unacceptable as a voting citizen of Nanaimo that the city wasted so much money on taking a group to the Supreme Court while all that group of ordinary citizens wanted was to work with the city to create positive change in our community. And as someone who is directly involved in the negotiations with the city, I know firsthand how willing we were to reach a compromise while not wasting such a large amount of taxpayers' dollars. But this seems to be a common theme with this city. While Mayor John Rattan tells Czech News that the city is in the middle of a financial crisis, Council approves a $70,000 bailout of the Port Theatre. Council sells $1 million real estate for $1, and Council spends $19,000 in legal fees that could have been avoided with dialogue and an open mind. There's a novel thought. But that's all okay. That is all fine. The 2011 municipal election resulted in an abysmal voter turnout. Less than 30% of the population voted. Well, in 2014, that will change. This council needs fresh thinking, members who are willing to engage in meaningful dialogue to produce real solutions. And the choice is yours. Embrace the future or get lost in the past. If you won't change, there are plenty of fresh, free-thinking citizens ready to replace you. Young and old, we are united to create change locally, federally, and globally. We are the 99%. You're all the 99%. You guys just forgot. And give me a call sometime when you want to remember. Thank you. I'm a little mad.
Okay. We have, are you on?
Any questions?
You're on.
Yes, I'm going to talk to this actually. So thank you, Mr. Chair, if it's okay if I speak. Thank you for coming and bringing your presentation. One of the first things I want to say is, in regards to Occupy Nanaimo, is the city has rules, they have bylaws which they have to follow. There's numerous people who I spoke to in the community. I wasn't on council when they put in the legal action against Occupy Nanaimo, but there was many people who I spoke to who said they didn't feel comfortable going downtown. I went by Diana Krall Plaza numerous times where I smelt marijuana smoke. It's difficult in that you say that they're the 99%, but 99% of the individuals wanted Occupy to leave the plaza and wanted a meaningful dialogue, and that which would have provided something more substantive. One of the things I found confusing about Occupy was that I didn't know what the solutions were. Perhaps that's something that I need to talk to you on a one-on-one basis. But I think that council and most of the people who are here right now did what was right for the community. They have to look after 86,000 individuals, and they have to make sure that they represent the entire community, just not one facet of it. So I think the council acted in the right way. Also, you said that in 2014, people can go and replace all the individuals here and actually bring meaningful discussion and new ideas. That's something that I ran upon in this last election, and everyone here, I think, brings something to the table in a meaningful way. And I think in 2014, if we don't do a good job, the electorate will show all of us that we didn't and will replace us. In the last election, as you can see, all of the people who ran for council, who were on the previous council, are here once again. So I think that shows to the electorate and shows to the people here that the electorate of those who went to go and vote actually have the support of the individuals up here. So I would say in 2014, go and run, and we'll see what happens. So thank you.
I thank you for your comment, Councillor Anderson, and I also haven't had the opportunity to congratulate you on your newly elected seat. I'd just like to respond to a few of your statements, because you made several very good ones. Number one, 26% of the citizens of Nanaimo is the electorate right now. That means a lot of people who haven't voted might be more encouraged to vote in 3 years from now. Another thing, you're a young guy, I'm a young guy, we're both in our 20s. We've probably been downtown a couple of times long before Occupy Nanaimo started. So the fact that you mentioned marijuana smoke, I mean, let's be honest. How many bars are downtown around Diana Krall Plaza? And how could you really pin that on one particular group when you got a lot of bar patrons down there? And also, just a personal example, after the court injunction was placed on Diana Krall Plaza, it took about 2 hours for a drunken bar patron to go down and, I don't mean to be crude, but urinate on the wall of the public library. That would have never happened with Occupy Nanaimo down there. And also, as someone who frequents the downtown area quite regularly, I work down there, I can tell you that Diana Krall Plaza is a filthy mess right now. There's cigarette butts all over the place, dirt, garbage, and quite frankly, we would have never let it get that dirty because Occupy Nanaimo was so preoccupied and quite frankly worried and scared about maintaining Diana Krall Plaza and keeping it as clean as possible so that, people such as the city or the RCMP, et cetera, wouldn't have an excuse to, remove us from the plaza earlier than they did. So I can tell you firsthand, we went to great lengths to keep it as clean as possible with the resources that we had, albeit limited. And, I don't know if you've been down there lately, but it's disgusting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been down there, and I do frequent the downtown quite often. I'll just give you one comment. I brought my friend from Ladysmith to, we were going to the credit union to fix one of our club's accounts, and he walked into Diana Krall Plaza and said, "What is all of that stuff around?" And I said, "This is Occupy Nanaimo." And he's like, "It looks like," and these are his words, "it looks like a shanty village." And when you have, the whole issue is around structures, and I think the city did what it needed to do. Staff went ahead and it worked alongside you, and I think the mayor as well did a phenomenal job in trying to work with you guys. From what I know is that he didn't have the information when he spoke to you, and I find the mayor to be a very honest and truthful person, and he doesn't go out of his way to say incorrect information. But that's what happened. It was about the structures, and I'm disappointed to think that this event did cost the taxpayers as much as it did. But I think there was other ways to go about bringing about meaningful discussion about this issue than taking a portion of the city for, I don't know how many individuals were in Occupy Nanaimo, but taking that away from the entire taxpayer and the individuals in Nanaimo who did not go into Diana Krall Plaza because of Occupy Nanaimo.
Without kicking a dead horse...
We just want to move along because we have another question for you, too.
Could I just quickly, 2 seconds, sure. I would just like to point out, Councillor Anderson, that this is a pickle. I actually just lost my train of thought. That's okay, Joe Ford. That's embarrassing.
It may come back. Anyway, we have Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. I certainly wish not to belabor this topic, but I would just like to add one correction. You indicated on the onset that you aren't a good or strong public speaker. I think that you just demonstrated this evening that you have a passion for public speaking. I would also just like to compliment both parties, the city and the Occupy membership, who conducted themselves with extreme civil obedience throughout. I think that there was an attempt by the city and the mayor and staff to avoid confrontation at all costs. And rightly or wrongly, there were some costs associated as we were watching this unfold globally with considerable civil unrest in other cities that did not act nearly as respectfully toward the Occupy movement as the city of Nanaimo did, in my opinion. And with that, I would like to compliment our mayor for his leadership as it related to how we avoided confrontation in relative speaking of a smaller situation. But one that was extremely important that you joined in, and I think you and I had several conversations throughout the 6 weeks. And I would just like to say that I think what you accomplished was awareness. And I think you achieved that. And I think people think differently about what took place, again, from whatever perspective they come from. So, in fact, I think you really did succeed in the awareness factor. And I think you should not lose that on getting mad or being upset. Because I think you did well, and I think the city did well to avoid what could have been uncomfortable or less desirable outcome. So I'd just like to compliment both sides, and thank you for coming with your presentation tonight.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Kipp. I was just going to, well, maybe before I waited for a while, but these lights keep coming on. I was just going to say...
Are we entering debate now on the issue?
Well, no, I just... Do you want to...
Because I have my 2 bits worth on this, too. Okay, but I think I'll wait till after other...
But wait a minute, I just wanted to make one quick
And when it comes out as information report, I'll talk then. Thank you.
I just want to make one quick comment here. Matt, just to say that I think really here in Nanaimo, we were probably one of the very last communities that still were working with the occupiers after, I think, most in Canada. We may be one of the largest, if not the largest one of our size in Canada. And I think, you know, and maybe you know this, you and I had a number of discussions on this, and we were, I think, working along the path of settlement, and I think it would have happened, but what it appeared to me was that towards the end, there was a change in thinking, and where you were saying I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it was my understanding your feelings were that there was a timeline involved, at some point Occupy Nanaimo would move on, and we were trying to work with that timeline. And then closer to the end, it became apparent that there was a change in thinking, and there was no departure date set up. And I think that's where the policy started to change a bit. But I agree with Councillor Bestwick. I think you people did, Occupy Nanaimo did make some big inroads, and I think it wasn't all in vain. I think you brought a lot of public awareness. Councillor Kipp, do you want to have a go? Now or never.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, it's never. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for the 3,000 meals. For the price tag that I could put on that, it's huge for what you did.
Thank you.
The shelter, the whole concept. Syria's killing each other right now. You tried to make a peaceful protest. I'm disappointed we spent $18,000 on lawyers. And that came from we had laws, we just needed to put them in place and to dialogue. Again, we've heard collaboration, unity, negotiation. All of some of the key components of a successful city could be used in that example. We did last longer than any other place and held back, and we didn't get militant, we didn't smash anything, we just sort of cleaned up on that. I think the biggest thing was, and I suggest on an analogy, I have many friends that understand the environment and they need to protect it, but they don't know why, but intrinsically they know this is right. And I believe Occupy Nanaimo intrinsically knew this world has to change. We're spending $123,000 or million and another $43 million on buildings and stuff, and it's going, and we think it'll never end. I'm a bit less positive on the environment of our economy, and I support Occupy far more. I wish we could have left a tent there with the message that this was Occupy Nanaimo, so people wouldn't forget that the economy's collapsing, people are having a tough time. So when we talk about this, I think our negotiations changed when the rules took over and the law took over and bylaw and police and everything. And I question $19,000. I really do, to the lawyers. I mean, they're the ones that make the money in every divorce. And I'm sad to say that's the way I felt it went. We were working together, things were working out, and then we divorced. And I was really sad that it happened that quickly. So there's my 2 bits worth. Thanks.
Okay, Matt, I see.
I would just like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, you, Councillor Bestwick, and you, Councillor Kipp, for your comments. I did remember what I was going to say. If I could just take 20 seconds out of your time there, in regards to. I think you guys all make some good points, but what keeps beating into my head, and I think I said this at council like last year, that when it comes down to basic human rights and bylaws, because we've all broken the law, even you guys, you haven't worn your seatbelt, you've sped, we've all done it. When it comes down to human rights and bylaws, human rights always trumps. And I'll leave it at that, and it was fun fighting you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Second, all those in favor? Okay. The next delegation is Mr. Jess Anderson. Mr. Anderson, yep, you have up to 10 minutes.
Shucks, you guys took a lot of my points away from me. I was supposed to get up and play bad cop with you guys. Point of information for those who weren't really familiar with the Occupy movement. This is kind of my own little version of what Occupy was about. It's a tent that says, think global, act local, and peaceful, green, sustainable world. So this is sort of what I got out of the movement. I was not involved when they first got going. I actually viewed it as a useless exercise because protests don't work unless they have a point and a purpose and an action plan. And I didn't see that down there originally. So after they lasted a few days, I started paying more attention and asking questions. And I found out it was a very diverse group. We had 16-year-old high school students. We had 78-year-old senior citizens. And the issues range from air to water to land issues to forestry to coal mines to changing the marijuana laws, which was confusing for everybody in the public that didn't sit down there as much as I had a chance to and talk to everybody. My purpose in my presentation tonight was on the costs that the city has listed, that was handed out to Check News and others, and interviews were done on Check TV, 5 o'clock yesterday. Porta potties, 4,000. Overtime, 850. I was disappointed in the overtime because I was there when the cleanup happened. I helped the occupiers clear out of the plaza, and although city workers were there throughout the process, the first one that stepped forward and helped me move stuff down there from the city was at 6:38 at night, so 2 hours into overtime. I was there personally until 2:30 in the morning. You've listed garbage bags, tape, and miscellaneous supplies for the removal of $250. I'd like to return the 6 bags we borrowed that we put our tenting materials in. I didn't realize they were that expensive. Okay. In regards to the legal fees, I was happy to receive a reply on the questions I put to City Council on December 19th on the costs and so forth. I received a reply from Doug Holmes on Friday, and it was noted in that reply to me that you had no plans to release the copy of the court documents in front of Madam Justice Wedge. I would note for the public record that of all of the infractions that were taken to Supreme Court of BC at a cost that's already been mentioned a few times, $18,954.10. Must be PST, HST, or whatever that brings it to that. The lawyers that you used are from Victoria. When you go on their website, they advertise mostly as logo and trademark and registry, which might have been why they lost on all of the costs and counts except the staying of the Occupy overnight in tents. Okay? So I was going to request through Freedom of Information that a copy of the court proceedings be posted by the city on their website so that people can look at the value they got for that money and make their own choice on that. I think it's allowable under your Freedom of Information stuff. I was going to read in the record otherwise, but I would note that I receive DNBIA, city newsletters, Old City Association, South End Association, in fact, every scrap of information on what's cooking in the bottom half of the Nanaimo. I also, on December 11th, was on the city website, the Tourism of Nanaimo website, and the Downtown Business Association website, and discovered that despite, how did that wording go? Lost opportunities resulting from people avoiding shopping, dining, perceived safety, etc. There was only 2 events after you shut down the Occupy that used the plaza. The Red Umbrella thing, which was a stopover on a march on the abuse that Diane Brennan was involved with, and one other event on the 17th. Now, during the occupation, the credit union held 3 events and, in fact, used one of the ideas from the Occupy movement for their advertising to get people to transfer their funds from their banks into the credit union so there's local pools of money to work with. The other event was your Winter Wonderland, which for the second year was up at Bevan Park. You had the finale up at Bevan Park. I brought along copies of the December 11th. There were, in fact, no other events held down there, and none since. So, public access restricted? I don't know. Now, December 19th, I also presented to City Council a couple of ideas on changing the funding formula for your financial forum. That came out of the Occupy movement. It was sort of something that I had done in Alberta years ago, forgot about, and thought was appropriate. Putting aside pools of money, taking interest less inflation, and paying for direct workers with the city so that eventually you can drop the level of property taxes down. The only comment I got from your assistant finance officer when I spoke to her at City Hall was that it would cost a lot of money to set it up initially. And my reply was, and less every year after. Okay? I also personally put in as an object under your art in the park call for tenders, a large art project, which was in fact a tent and a podium as a speaker's corner for Diana Krall Plaza. I haven't heard anything from your purchasing department of the city other than, how would you bolt it down? And I said, any way you want, because you picked the location on it. The object was to have a podium like this with a set of lights on the front, amber for this issue affects a child, green light. I've got a solution on an issue.
Okay, sir, remember you're talking about costs incurred during Occupy Nanaimo, so let's try to stay on that.
All right. Now, the cost on that would have been $3,000 to put it in had I been awarded that through your art tender thing. So we have, in fact, brought forward things to the community, and there is no reason something like that, a recognized thing like Speaker's Corners, can't be incorporated as a cooperative thing, as a memorial thing, or just as a good idea so you guys can bring out the process information that the public doesn't know about your limitations and the rules you have to govern under, to explain why you're doing things certain ways. I'd like you to consider that within your plans for the future, okay? Other than that, you know, you guys did do a lot of cooperation. I think everybody got caught up emotionally in deadlines, and it's unfortunate that it went that way. I appreciate all of the efforts staff has given us in committee names, members, administration, who does what, how to contact them. These sorts of things didn't happen in a lot of other occupies. And you're right, around the world, people were getting shot for expressing their opinions. That didn't happen here. We didn't have any instances of police confrontation. We didn't have any in fact, we did pretty well on both sides of the issue. That was one of the reasons that I got involved in the group, was because I saw more thinking but not enough transparency between the groups. So as a general note, for your own information, the Occupy movement has grown each time in membership and in other groups helping them every time they're put down in the newspaper. So I would like, if you would, on this report from Randy Churchill tonight, it would be nice if you struck the economic opportunities and so forth out of that, okay, because it's unnecessary.
Your 10 minutes are up. We got some questions for you. Don't go. We got Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation, and the first thing I want to say is it seems like you really care a lot about Nanaimo and where we move as a city, and I don't know if you sit on any of the advisory committees, commissions, or boards, but there's applications currently out there, and you can go to City Hall and speak to Ms. Harrison, and you can get an application, and perhaps you'll end up sitting on one of those boards, because I think that's one of the ways that you can really make a difference in this community. So I would suggest, if you really have the hope and desire to make a difference in the city, I suggest that you go and fill out one of the applications to sit on one of the advisory committees or boards. And thank you for your presentation as well.
Okay, sir, I see no further questions. Thank you very much.
That's all for questions?
No further questions.
All right.
No further questions. So your 10 minutes is up, sir.
Just a last point of information for you. On the 16th, the Occupy movement will be putting out a newsletter. One of the articles I put in is on legal area. It's when and when not to go to court.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Now, Ms. Harrison, move receipt of the delegation. And second, all those in favor? Opposed? Now, Ms. Harrison, we're going to bring forward, I think it's 6E at this point. And which ones are we going to bring forward? You want Mr. 20A and 20B brought forward at this point?
I believe that was the motion of council to bring forward 20A, B, and C.
So the first delegation then will be Mr. Kenneth Pierce. Mr. Pierce is not here, okay. So the second delegation, this gentleman standing up, is he? He's leaving. So second delegation then we have is Mr. Ben Arsenault. Mr. Arsenault, are you here? Welcome, sir. You have up to 10 minutes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ben Arsenault. I'm from the University of Victoria's Environmental Law Clinic, and I've been working with the local organization Save Lindley Valley West. So I'll be speaking to two things tonight. One, why Nanaimo should preserve Lindley Valley West as a nature park, and two, how the City of Nanaimo can do so legally. The British Columbia lifestyle, and indeed our cultural identity, has always been closely linked to the land. The natural places close to our homes make BC one of the best places on earth to live. Easy access to nature allows British Columbians to make outdoor recreation an integral part of our lifestyle. These natural places form a refuge from modern life, where we can escape stresses and return to our work and families replenished. The wonders of the marsh or forest provide one of the world's best classrooms for our children. As we hike and bicycle their trails, they become the most pleasant exercise facilities and a place to meet neighbors. Municipal green space significantly increases citizens' physical and mental health. There are convincing reasons to protect Lindley Valley West. The valley is an excellent example of BC's natural beauty in a city. Its trails provide recreational opportunities for residents, and its hundreds of acres of woodlands, wetlands, and cliffs provide habitat for a wide variety of flora and fauna, including at-risk species such as the great blue heron and red-legged frog. It's an exciting place where one can see beavers, Canada's national symbol, at work in the middle of a city. The valley is located in Canada's coastal Douglas Fir biogeoclimatic zone, which is unique to southwestern BC and greatly threatened by development. This zone is a priority for environmental protection, even more so now that DL33 in Nanoose is being lost to logging. Lindley Valley has been identified as unique because it hosts intact ecosystems and threatened species found within the coastal Douglas Fir zone. Eastern parts of Lindley Valley have been protected for this reason. By protecting Lindley Valley West, Nanaimo can prevent the fragmentation of habitats spanning the entire valley and preserve a wild area that can sustain the unique and at-risk animal and plant species living throughout Lindley Valley. Future generations will thank you for having the vision and foresight to protect this area as a nature park. Protecting Lindley Valley West also makes good economic sense. Green cities are prosperous cities. Studies show that the quality of an area's physical environment is one of the top 2 factors in business decisions to locate in an area. As a prominent Oregon corporate official puts it, the livability of Oregon is our competitive edge in economic development. In addition, high cliffs, wooded areas, and wetlands will make it costly to provide city services for Lindley Valley. Protecting Lindley Valley West can save Nanaimo the cost of providing the services required for development. The city would save money by protecting Lindley Valley West and increasing density in other areas. Infrastructure costs per home are 4.5 times higher in low-density suburbs than the cost per home in compact urban areas. Note a final economic advantage. Land near green spaces typically increases substantially in value, which can increase the city's tax base. A protected Lindley Valley West could become Nanaimo's Stanley Park. Nanaimo should not pass up such an opportunity to enhance the city's livability and attractiveness to citizens, visitors, and business. Nanaimo has the legal power to protect Lindley Valley West as a nature park. Under the Local Government Act, Nanaimo has the power to pass zoning bylaws which regulate land use. Under Nanaimo's zoning bylaw number 4500, all land within Lindley Valley West is currently within zones that could be residentially developed. To protect Lindley Valley West as a nature park, Nanaimo could pass a bylaw to have it rezoned under the Parks, Recreation, and Culture 1, or PRC1 zone, which facilitates nature park uses and does not permit residential development. It is a fully legitimate exercise of Nanaimo's power to rezone Lindley Valley West as PRC1. The only restriction courts place on municipalities' zoning power is that it be exercised for a proper public purpose. Providing parkland is a proper public purpose. It is considered to be a service that municipalities provide to their citizens under the community charter. Should Nanaimo pass a bylaw to rezone Lindley Valley West as PRC1, a bylaw amending Nanaimo's OCP to put Lindley Valley West under the Parks and Open Space designation in the OCP would also be required. This is because the Local Government Act states all bylaws passed following the adoption of an OCP must be consistent with the objectives and goals set out in it. A PRC1 zoning would not be consistent with Lindley Valley West's current urban reserve and neighborhood designation, given that these designations are for lands that may be developed residentially. However, a simple amendment to place Lindley Valley West under the Parks and Open Space designation at the same time it is rezoned as PRC1 would ensure its rezoning as park is consistent with Nanaimo's OCP. I will provide 4 examples of why zoning Lindley Valley West as park would be consistent with Nanaimo's OCP. First, there are specific recommendations in the plan that Lindley Valley West should be designated as park and protected. The future land use plan map shows part of Lindley Valley West as a location for a park, and Section 5.6 of the OCP, titled Urban Forests and Greenways, states that Nanaimo will expand existing natural spaces such as the Cottle Creek watershed and Lindley Valley Greenway. Second, designating Lindley Valley West as park would further Goal 5 of the OCP, which is to protect and enhance our environment. The OCP states this means protecting and enhancing the ecological health of significant natural features and systems. Lindley Valley West is a significant natural feature, as is evidenced by its threatened species and its connectivity to other natural areas. Designating Lindley Valley West as park would protect its unique ecosystem and enhance the ecological health of existing protected areas in the rest of the valley. Third, designating Lindley Valley West as park would be consistent with Goal 1 of the OCP to manage urban growth. A primary objective of this goal is managing urban growth and reducing urban sprawl by guiding development to areas that already have urban services. Much of Lindley Valley West does not currently have urban services, so allowing it to be developed would be contrary to the OCP goal of more efficient use of roads, sewer, water, and storm services. Also, developing Lindley Valley West would be contrary to the OCP's goal of increasing housing density to generate a population base that will support commercial services and other utilities and the provision of public transit. On the other hand, not developing Lindley Valley West would, in the words of the OCP, make sense from social, economic, and environmental perspectives and be consistent with Goal 1. Fourth, designating Lindley Valley West as park would be consistent with Goal 4 of the OCP, which is to promote a thriving economy. The OCP links economic prosperity to quality of life and says quality of life is dependent on providing amenities like open space and recreation opportunities. Creating Lindley Valley West Park would create significant recreational opportunities as several trails wind through the valley, providing excellent walking and biking. As previously discussed, cities with natural spaces have been found to attract businesses. Following its rezoning as PRC1, Lindley Valley West should be incorporated under Nanaimo's Park Dedication Bylaw number 7137 to ensure fuller protection for Lindley Valley West, as land that is designated under this bylaw requires approval of Nanaimo's electors to be rezoned for use as something other than a park. As a result of rezoning Lindley Valley West under the PRC1 zone, Nanaimo may be required to compensate the landowners in the valley for loss of value that results from restricting existing private uses of their land to strictly public uses. This is due to Section 914, Sub 2 of the Local Government Act, which states compensation is payable to a person who has had the use of their land restricted to public use by a bylaw. Enacting a bylaw to rezone Lindley Valley West under the PRC1 zone would restrict the use of the land to a public use and invoke Section 914, Sub 2 of the Local Government Act. It is recommended that Nanaimo create a parkland acquisition fund to allow for such expenditures. The Capital Regional District has a parkland acquisition fund that is sustained by a property tax levy, and it has been a great success. The tax amounted to an average of $10 per household annually, and as of 2008, enabled the CRD to contribute $17.25 million towards acquiring critical parkland. It is entirely possible that the Capital Region's enviable park system helped attract Microsoft's recent major investment in the region. The Cowichan Valley Regional District also has a popular parkland acquisition fund. Section 8, Sub 3A of the Community Charter empowers municipalities to broadly regulate, prohibit, and impose requirements in relation to municipal services. Provision of parkland is a municipal service. Therefore, Nanaimo could establish a property tax levy that would go into a parkland acquisition fund in order to provide parkland to its citizens. In summary, Nanaimo should act now to protect the ecologically unique and beautiful Lindley Valley West. It can do so by rezoning Lindley Valley West as nature park under the PRC1 zone. This would be a fully legitimate exercise of Nanaimo's zoning powers under the Local Government Act. Along with this rezoning, Nanaimo's OCP should be amended to put Lindley Valley West under the Parks and Open Space designation in the OCP. Once Lindley Valley West is rezoned as park, it should be dedicated under Nanaimo's Park Dedication Bylaw to ensure its secure protection as parkland. Although rezoning Lindley Valley West as park may require Nanaimo to compensate the landowners in the valley, Nanaimo can facilitate such expenditures by creating a parkland acquisition fund. No one has ever regretted establishing Stanley Park in Vancouver. The founders of Beacon Hill Park are now unanimously praised for their foresight. Similarly, future generations of Nanaimo residents will thank councillors that take such a visionary view of the future of Lindley Valley. Thank you for your time.
Okay, sir. I might just say that I can only speak for myself at this point, but I think Lindley Valley is a wonderful piece of land, and I can assure you that I personally would like to do anything within my power to keep it and preserve it. Where the issue comes in, of course, is that when you refer to the fact that we may have to reimburse those people that have purchased the land before changing to PRC1, I would suggest that to do otherwise would be to invite a massive amount of litigation. Some of the pieces of land that were bought in the Lindley Valley, the people paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. My question to you, you've done a great deal of research on it. What do you see as the approximate fair market value for the city to acquire the Lindley Valley parts that you're referring to? You must have a ballpark figure of what it's worth.
For the land in Lindley Valley West?
For the land you're suggesting we acquire for park, what is the present market value of that? You've done a lot of research. You must have that information.
I believe Jennifer O'Rourke can answer that better than I can.
All right, fair enough. But you know, the point is that when you're talking about trying to raise the money, and I'm not trying to be confrontational. I support what you're saying, and in principle, I'm supportive of what you're doing. But the problem is at this particular time, we're talking millions of dollars, obviously. We don't have it. I think it's something like $600,000 a year we put aside for park purchases, a lot of which was used when we bought Nick Point Park for $3.1 million about 2 years ago. And so I guess the question to staff is, can the staff give me an indication of how much money we have available for park purchase at this time?
Well, Your Worship, as you indicated, the city currently budgets around, I believe it's $800,000 a year for property acquisitions. The city does have a parks master plan to guide it in property park purchases. And actually, the first priority for park purchases is access to seaside locations. The second priority is access to the lakefront, and the third priority is wooded areas. And I do know that there's other wooded areas of at least this priority elsewhere in the city. So it's just a situation where there's lots of good property acquisitions and only so much money.
Yeah. Okay, we do have some questions. I just want to say, though, that I think I've been through it a couple of times, and it's a beautiful piece of land, and I'd like to see if there's any way to get it preserved if we could. But your suggestion about households paying $10 parcel tax of some time is a great idea, but of course, if we're going to do something now, it's going to take a while at $10 a property to acquire that money, because I think time is of essence in getting this thing done. But as I say, I'd love to see it preserved probably as much as anyone out there. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. Many of us campaigned on the fact that we wanted to maintain green spaces and trails for the future generations of our city. So it's a very high priority on many of our lists. I believe the value of the land is $15 million. Jennifer may speak to that. But are you aware of any federal or provincial grants that would be that people could apply for, municipalities could apply for a project as massive as this?
I'm not off the top of my head. I'm not aware of any, but yeah, I think we may be able to do some further research and submit some fuller answers if you would like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. One more question, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Not a question, but a comment. It's interesting that tonight we're talking about the first two items about human rights and land preservation. So I think that certainly the manner in which our focus and direction is going is very evident, and it's interesting that being presented by two very strong, articulated, well-researched young people of our community. So if we all have the same passion and all your friends and associates and colleagues have the same passion that you and the previous speaker come from, then we're in good shape. I would just like to say that you bring a strong economic position to what the values of preservation of some of our most desirable properties are for future generations, and I could certainly not agree with you more. I know that there would be challenges as it relates to down zoning in essence from to PRC1. Indeed, we have a very strong community here with NALT, who is working very strongly to preserve parts of Mount Benson. I'm sure we would all wake up one morning and roll over if in horror if we saw any part of that developed. So it's, as the mayor has said, there's challenges, of course, but like everything, when people bring awareness and strong rationale and strong beliefs economically, environmentally, and as passionately as you have, I think that you gain traction, and I think that you brought awareness to this council on its value that we may not have considered the way that you presented it to us. So I thank you for that. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp, one more.
I really appreciate your input. Thank you very much. I believe Lindley Valley was protected years ago with an urban containment boundary, and it shifted to urban reserve. We have shifted so the regional districts is protecting more green space. I much appreciate it. I'm going to shift topics. You're a bright speaker. You're intelligent. You need to speak to Victoria to get them to treat their sewer. I'm serious. You need to make a presentation to their government to get on that, because it's going to affect you a lot longer than it will us, and you can make that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And, I've provided copies of the presentation to the clerk, and also Jennifer O'Rourke will be speaking later to a more, perhaps a more interim option for protecting Lindley Valley West.
Okay, thank you, sir. I see no further questions. Good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second. All those in favor? Okay, the next item on the agenda is Commissioner of the Mayor's report on item 7A. Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought you were going to speak. I didn't have you on my agenda. I thought you were going to come at the end on matters related to this. I only had 2 on my agenda, but then that doesn't mean anything. Come forward. Maybe you can provide your name for the staff.
Jennifer O'Rourke. Yes, this is a follow-up to Ben's excellent presentation, and I understand, I appreciate the questions you're raising about the cost of protecting an area like Lindley as valuable as it is in all sorts of ways. And what I want to present to you is an interim option, an additional legal option as an interim strategy available to the city and it comes from, again, from information provided by the Environmental Law Clinic at University of Victoria, who've helped us a lot. This alternative is to pass a bylaw to amend Nanaimo's OCP to put Lindley Valley under resource protection designation under an amendment process which is set out in the OCP. The OCP resource protection designation serves to protect and preserve environmentally sensitive areas and agricultural resources. Land under the resource protection designation should be preserved for agricultural, environmental, and recreational purposes. This land use designation permits park and open spaces, including natural parks, passive recreation, protected areas, environmentally sensitive areas. This interim option is to pass an amendment to the OCP to put Lindley Valley West under the resource protection designation and rezone lands currently zoned R10 to AR2 agricultural. Designating Lindley Valley West under resource protection would not trigger a need for Nanaimo to buy the affected properties in Lindley Valley West. It's not completely ensuring the protection of Lindley Valley or its continued availability to the public, but it will promote the health of Lindley Valley West, the ecosystems and the habitats which, as we saw last week, are under threat. As well, it would provide a reasonable time frame for raising funds to purchase lands in Lindley at fair market value, which recently were estimated at $6.6 million. Deborah Curran, who's an expert on local government and environmental law and associated with the Environmental Law Clinic, has published a legal opinion, which I'll give the clerk, that local governments do not have to compensate landowners for any reduction in the value of land or for any loss or damage that results from adopting an OCP or zoning bylaw. That is, in other words, if the land is rezoned but is still in private hands. Canadian courts continue to reinforce this principle, noting that local governments may change zoning up or down to realize legitimate public interests without attracting liability to compensate landowners for changes in property values. So this is an interim arrangement which would allow us to continue protecting Lindley and to keep other uses of the land at bay while we raise money to actually purchase the land. So that's our plan B, if you like, and I'm willing to answer questions. Or if they're really complicated and legal questions, we will refer them back to the Environmental Law Clinic and bring answers back to you at a subsequent meeting.
I might just mention that I would be very much surprised if there was any way that we could change the zoning to the detriment of a property owner where there was a substantial loss of income. I know there's several property owners there that have large tracts of land, and I know some of them have been purchased reasonably recently and have made massive payments, and I would be shocked if they wouldn't look at litigation if we change the zoning and penalize them for that.
Just to clarify, we're not including the Lamont development at all in this section of land. I think if you could bring up the map again.
Yeah, maybe put the overhead on.
If you can, just to clarify that so that we can see that. Anyway, the Lamont development is not at all included in the parcels of land.
No, but I'm wondering, there's about, Mr. Swady might be able to assist us on the number, but I think there's probably about 5 pieces, fairly large pieces of land that are in this zone that we're discussing. Is that correct?
Your Worship, we'll certainly look to the applicant to give us an indication, but there's 4 large properties that I know of, 2 owned by Mount Benson Development Limited, Sea Coast Development Limited, and Wheel Estate Limited own 4 of the largest properties there west of the City Park and DL 56.
The land that we looked at in terms of parcels were all lands that have no dwellings on them at all. So there's no issue there of housing or anything like that.
No, but I would suggest that these people either bought or somehow acquired this property with the view of developing it. And I'm not suggesting that's the highest and best use of it, but that's what their intentions are. And these are very large tracts of land, and I would suggest that there would be a huge amount of remuneration involved here, or compensation rather, involved here before we could just arbitrarily change the title on it, or the zoning on it.
The largest piece of land in this segment that we have sort of identified is about 83 acres, and its address is 5701 Vandernook Road, and its assessment last year was just over $3 million. Its assessment this year has gone up, unlike all of the other neighboring properties, to $4.5 million. We think that this is because a city road that was built adjacent to this property through Lindley Valley now links with a road that is in the Lamont development. But we don't know what that city road cost to build.
Okay, I think the issue that we're really dealing with is where's the money going to come from? And if we're talking somewhere between $4 and $5 million, are you going to have a little conference there?
I was just going to say, perhaps I could assist with that last question from your worship. Calvin Sandmore, I'm a lawyer with the Environmental Law Clinic. And on that question of whether or not you'd have to compensate if you downzone to agricultural and resource lands, I commend Deborah Curran's paper. She teaches municipal law at the law school at UVic. And as I understand the principle, the key thing is that if there's still an economic use of the land, if you can still farm the land or use it for resource uses, no compensation is payable. Where compensation would be payable by Nanaimo is if you zone it so it's solely a public use, like a park. There's no private economic use. But if there's still a private economic use, like agriculture or resource lands, Nanaimo would not have to pay compensation generally. And that's
okay, what I'm suggesting, sir, is that maybe one or more of these properties that are held, like this Mount Benson development, I would suggest that they have subdivision in mind. I'm assuming that.
If they have subdivision
in mind for a future development. And what I'm suggesting is that their interpretation of what the land is worth may be totally different from yours, and they may have a higher expectation looking at it as a developed piece. Now,
at a certain point in the subdivision process, they would have a vested right, but prior to applying for subdivision, as I understand it, and we can certainly confirm this with Professor Curran, that there would not be compensation.
I think what would be helpful for us at the city would be for you to identify exactly what pieces of land that you're. When you say Lindley Valley, that's a huge, big area, and it's hard for us to know exactly what you're looking at and where the money's coming from. But I think both pieces need to be identified. How much is it going to cost? Where's the money going to come from? And if it is anywhere above even $6 million, I can tell you it'll be an extremely difficult thing to arrange from the city alone, unless there's other bodies of governments, provincial, federal, that want to deal with it, or some kind of a funding opportunity that you people are going to suggest to us momentarily.
Well, we're working on it. And there is something called the Green Legacies Fund, which we can bring more information to you at a subsequent meeting. I don't want to take a lot of time with that. And that's certainly a piece that we would be very happy to research on your behalf. And just to clarify, it's really 4 major pieces of land. It adds, and we're working from assessment values to come up to the $6.6 million.
Well, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of land, and I think we all want to see it preserved, but I just don't. I would feel very uncomfortable if the people weren't fairly compensated for what the fair market value.
And the intention is not to disadvantage the landowners, and that's why we have this both of these visions. One is to eventually acquire the land, and in the meantime to rezone it so that it is protected. And as you saw last week, when that land in that area, it causes massive environmental changes.
Oh, absolutely.
And so this is really to keep the land in a kind of a holding pattern and really not to disadvantage any landowners.
Just to move along, if we could maybe have you or the group provide our staff with as much information of which areas you want and so on.
We will do that.
We'll continue on with it because it's a worthwhile thing, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Now, is there a seconder? All those in favor? Now, there's nobody else, Ms. Harrison, that I don't have on my agenda that's going to be speaking. And I'll go into 7A unless you nod or shake your head here. The next thing is the mayor's report, and at the in-camera meeting of council held today, council received a report from the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability regarding the renaming of 2 categories of the Green Nanaimo Awards and passed the following motion. And the motion was that council endorse the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability, ACES, recommendation that the Youth Award category of the Green Nanaimo Awards be renamed the Jeff Thomas Environmental Youth Award, and that the award with distinction category of the Green Nanaimo Awards be named in honor of Mervyn Wilkinson. Ms. Sears, do we need a motion, or is that just an update? We're just
This is just an announcement. It's fine.
So that's actually been passed, and we'll move ahead with that one. Well, I've just done, well, I sat and reported. It was almost the same. Into proclamations, that 2012, February 23rd to 2012, February 1 is Rotary Week in the city of Nanaimo. And secondly, that 2012, February 29th is Pink Shirt Day in the city of Nanaimo. And I'm just wondering, are we able to have Pink Shirt Day only once every 4 years? If it's on the 29th, it's a bit of a challenge. But anyway, this year it is Pink Shirt Day in the city of Nanaimo. And moving to commission reports, 9A, the Nanaimo Community Heritage Commission Annual Work Plan for 2012. And the Commission's recommendation that Council endorse the Nanaimo Community Heritage Work Plan for 2012. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving down into Community Safety and Development, 11A, application for exclusion from the Agricultural Land Reserve, LR 11 at 6571 Nathan Road. Staff recommendation that Council forward a resolution to the Agricultural Land Commission recommending that the application for exclusion from the Agricultural Land Reserve, LR 11 6571 Nathan Road, be refused in accordance with the subdivision 2.7.4 of the City of Nanaimo's Official Community Plan Bylaw 2008 number 6500.
Move staff recommendation.
Move the staff recommendation. Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And move into 11B, general amendments to zoning bylaw 2011 number 4500. And at this point, the staff will be providing PowerPoint presentations regarding the general amendments.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to quickly go through the general amendments to Bylaw 4500. These are amendments arising from the newly adopted bylaw. The first is to add a definition for accessory buildings for gross floor area. The current definition just applies to the principal building, and now that we are moving into the area of allowing suites in accessory buildings, we need to include a definition for gross floor area when it applies to the accessory building. Also, we had a restriction for suites that was 40% of the principal building, and that would not apply. It would instead be limited by the general restrictions. Parkway setback. In the previous bylaw, we had a 20-meter setback for lots abutting the parkway, and that was left out of the new bylaw, so we're putting it back in. For roadside stands, this is one of the more embarrassing omissions from the new bylaw. The urban food gardens allowed for curbside sales, and they are not to impede sight lines from the driveway, and we left out the word "not." So my apologies, and we'll correct it.
A little bit of a challenge there, yes.
Bit of a challenge. Yeah. Heat pumps, you recall a few years ago we introduced regulations pertaining to heat pumps, and they apply to single-family dwellings. Where we're having difficulty is in the siting restrictions on multifamily lots where you have a variety of buildings on a site. What is the front of one house may be facing the rear of another house on a multifamily site, townhouse-style development, and so the amendment here is to clarify that it's for single-family dwellings only. In Section 946 of the Local Government Act is a section of the Act which pertains to subdivision for a family member, for a relative. And at the moment, the current bylaw has a 5-hectare parent parcel for Section 946 subdivisions. The Local Government actually includes a provision in it that requires only 1 hectare, so this change is to bring the bylaw into accordance with the Local Government Act. This was the question came up earlier in tonight's meeting with regards to duplexes on corner lots. This is a proposed amendment to allow for detached units on those corner lots. In the R4 zone, which is our duplex zone, we currently allow that provision. We allow for 2 separate dwelling units. So this amendment is to bring the corner lots in the R1 zone into the same set of rules as apply to a duplex zoned lot, so you could have 2 separate dwelling units. With regards to RV park zoning, there was a the two zones got transposed in one of the transfers from the regulations pertaining to RV parks and the regulations pertaining to mobile home parks got transposed, and the proposed amendment is to reinstate those conditions back to the way they were in Bylaw 4000. With regards to the conditions of use, I should point out, particularly for anyone from NOCA who's listening to this, this applies not to the R1 or the single-family section of the NOCA neighborhood. This applies to the section of the NOCA neighborhood which is R12, R13, and R14, so the remainder of the neighborhood. And there were conditions of use: no parking within the front yard. Where lots abut a lane, the parking shall be accessed from the lane, and parking restricted to a single driveway entrance. Those conditions of use were left out of the new bylaw, and the proposed amendment is to reinstate these conditions of use into the bylaw. There are also some mapping amendments. In the Sika, the south end of the Sika neighborhood, there were some properties that were previously zoned C4, these 4 lots here, which allowed for multiple family dwellings, and they were changed to R1, and the proposed change is to put them back to allow for the potential for townhouse development on these sites. The second map change is a lot owned by the Island Crisis Care Society, which they operate as a women's drop-in center. It was previously zoned P2, which was the public and institutional use. It got zoned to R1, and we're proposing to zone it back to CS1, which is community service, which are where we put these type of not-for-profit uses. The Gulfview Drive split zoning, the easiest way to describe this one is there was a sort of rectangle placed randomly over the area, which indicated an area where the lots were going to be duplex lots. The area has since been subdivided, and the zone boundary and the lot boundaries don't line up, so this change is just to align the zoning boundaries with the lot boundaries to correct that error. Finally, I believe this is finally, I shouldn't speak too far, I think it's my last slide. On Barons Road, which is in the area near Wellington High School, this was a duplex which has a vet clinic on the upper floor and units below. It's currently zoned Corridor 1, which is strictly residential uses. The proposed zoning is Corridor 2, which is mixed use, and that would legalize the existing vet clinic in the building and return it to what was proposed previously. Oh, sorry. One more. This was an area, this is down in the south end, in the Chase River area. It was zoned steep slope when we brought in the steep slope zoning, and it was a 3-phase subdivision. This final phase of the subdivision is essentially, there's less than 5% of the area is actually steep slope, would meet our definition. So the proposal is to allow for the R1 zoning, which also will allow for the corner lots to be developed as duplex lots. And that's my last slide.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're just going to, we're going to receive the report on it. There's no motion involved. Okay, to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. As amended. The C is Heritage Facade Grant Approval, St. Andrew's United Church. Is that it? So, sorry? Is there something you're going to do on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll read it then. The staff recommendation that council approve a $5,000 heritage facade grant for exterior rehabilitation of St. Andrew's United Church located at 315 Fitzwilliam Street, subject to the conditions specified in the report. And I think the part that you're going to do as a suggestion, Ms. Johnstone, is to Councillor Johnstone, sorry, is going to be maybe under I in the corporate services there.
I was going to speak to this as well, Your Worship.
Okay, please go.
Staff, thank you for the email this afternoon to clarify the conditions surrounding the $20,000 grant that's available, and to point out that one of the applicants has decided not to make application for a heritage grant. St. Andrew's United Church has applied for a $5,000 grant of a possible, there's a $20,000 in that grant, and it's on a first come, first served basis, Your Worship. Being that there is $15,000 other available money in there, I'd like to make recommendation that we increase that amount to $10,000. The roof of the church, which is not just a church, it's a major public building that hosts a great deal of public concerts as well, and it's a significant heritage building, that we increase that $5,000 heritage grant, facade grant, to $10,000.
I'll second that.
You can second that? Okay. That's it?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Discussion on the motion then. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Respectfully, is it a question to staff? Heritage facade, does that transfer into roofing? Like, is roofing considered a part of heritage facade permissiveness?
Typically, the facade grants go for the facade, which is the vertical face of the building, but we've also given heritage grants in the past for other upgrades which preserve the heritage values of the building. I believe we have done another roof structure in one of our other grants, and it's to, as I say, preserve the overall heritage value of the building.
Thank you. Just to follow up, Your Worship, is there any limitations on how frequently or how often during a period of time, and this isn't necessarily specific to this request, but is there any period of time that buildings or properties are permitted to come back for more funding?
In the criteria for this grant program, there actually is not a limitation. St. Andrew's United Church has previously received a grant for $20,000, which I believe was related to damage to their windows and repair of the stained glass. And this is their second application for a grant.
Thank you. Just finally, Your Worship, we had a previous situation that we dealt with in the last month, I believe, where we provided more money, or there was a recommendation to provide more money to a group than what they actually asked for, and we found that that might not be a prudent thing for us to do for setting different precedents. So although I understand that if they made application for the $10,000 and it's on a first come first served basis, and if in fact it also would be applicable to roofing, then I have absolutely no problem in supporting the amendment to $10,000. I just want to ensure that we're not overstepping a request for a certain amount and then we grant a higher amount than what they actually asked for.
Anyone have a go at that? Mr. Kenny?
Your Worship, I think this is somewhat different in that I don't believe they restricted their request to $5,000 as was the case last week when they had asked for a certain amount and received, and then the committee was recommending more. In this case, the committee had actually recommended less than they wanted, and Councillor Johnstone's recommendation is to provide them more because there is more and their actual expenditures are a lot more.
Okay. Certainly, I will be supporting it because the St. Andrew's United Church is a huge asset in our community, and it's like anything else. If it's not maintained to a certain standard, it'll be lost. So I think it's worthwhile doing. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I was going to express the same concerns that Councillor Bestwick alluded to. More money is being paid than is being asked for, in a sense. But that has been adequately explained, so I can live with that. My question to staff is, are there any outstanding requests from other sources for any of that $20,000 at this point?
Your Worship, the only other one I'm aware of is the one that has subsequently been withdrawn. The applicant in that case looked at the conditions that were going to be attached to the grant and decided for $5,000, didn't want to tie up through the agreement his property, and therefore has said thank you for offering the grant, but is not interested at this time.
So for all intent and purpose, we still have $10,000 to deal with in the future.
If this motion were to pass, there would still be $10,000 remaining in the grant fund. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I see no further questions on the board, so question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move into item D, liquor application number LA 72, entertainment endorsement for a food primary liquor license at MGM Restaurant, 240 Nickel Street. Staff recommendation that council recommend to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, LCLB, to approve the application to include patron participation entertainment as part of the MGM Restaurant's existing food primary liquor license. Someone like to move that to get on? Move. Second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The item E is report of the public hearing held Thursday, February 2nd, 2012 for bylaws 4500.009, 4500.010, and 4500.011. Staff recommendation that council receive the report and the minutes of the public hearing held 2012, February 2. So I'd like to move that. Move receive. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Old City R1 zone survey and proposed amendments to zoning bylaw 4500. Staff recommendation that council direct staff to 1, prepare a zoning amendment bylaw to be considered by council that includes the following. A, maintain the minimum allowable lot size requirement for the R1 zone located in the Old City neighborhood area at 500 square meters, but remove the allowance in the same area for 450 square meter minimum lot area for lots abutting a lane, and B, lower the maximum height allowance for accessory buildings containing a secondary suite from 7 meters to 4.5 meters dash 5.5 meters depending on roof pitch in the Old City neighborhood area, and 2, work with the Nanaimo Old City Association, NOCA, and the residents of the Old City R1 zone area to develop a new intensive residential development permit area and associated design guidelines for this portion of the Old City neighborhood for consideration by council, and 3, bring a report to council to reconsider the maximum allowable height for accessory buildings containing a secondary suite should council adopt an intensive residential development permit area with assigned design guidelines, rather. Move staff recommendations. Move in second. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I alluded to it earlier. When I attended the Plan Nanaimo Advisory Committee meeting where this was discussed, there was a long discussion, and when the vote came up, the recommendations from staff as we found them, including the exclusion of duplexes on corner lots, passed the first time. And then an amendment was made afterwards that sort of as a belated thought, all of a sudden duplexes were back in. And given the fact that duplexes on corner lots can mean 2 separate entities, I'm somewhat confused, I have to tell you, but I think I would, and I'm going to move that we exclude duplexes on corner lots as was requested by NOCA and as was recommended at the PNAC stage of the discussion. If I have a second.
Yep. Okay, for debate. Is there any staff comment on that? Mr. Tucker?
Yes, Your Worship. It was, as Councillor Patchy has described, that there was considerable debate over this question of duplexes, and it certainly, in terms of the survey that was conducted with residents by city staff, there was support for removing the allowance for duplexes coming out of that survey. So if this were Council's wish to proceed without the duplexes, we'd prepare the bylaw accordingly.
Okay, thank you. We'll follow up. We have Councillor Beswick.
My comments and questions, Your Worship, are not related to the amendment.
Okay, that's what we're dealing with now. And you're on the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to get clarification from Councillor Padgett too, but one thing I know with a single-family lot, we can have a secondary suite in it up to a certain size. With a duplex lot, I just think that part of what this originally was intended with duplexes on bigger corner lots was that mix of housing. And I think that's one of the things we've been trying to do with our plan for a while now, is get a mix of housing in certain areas so people can have choices or be able to possibly live in that area a longer time during different transitions in life. So part of me is I understand totally what the Old City neighborhood is trying to do, and that's protect the integrity, the form and character. They're concerned with massing of the buildings. And I think actually I support the idea and the concept of everything, but I wonder, does staff think it will restrict any mix of housing by having this in?
The potential number of corner lots, or the potential, is 16. So the loss of density, or potential loss of density, I suppose you'd say, is 16 potential dwelling units. But you also have the argument on the other hand where if it's built as a single-family dwelling, you're permitted to have a secondary suite. So the number of dwelling units, you could argue, remain the same. We don't allow secondary suites in duplexes, and so it's a wash in terms of the density goals of the OCP.
Now, if I can, Your Worship, one of the things that I do support in that then is a lot of these are, from a business perspective, they're stratified later, so it's separate ownership for the duplex. So it does, I mean, in a single family, it's usually the house and the rental suite. So it's a single owner with a rental, which I really like the idea of, owner-occupied rentals. But this also gives the ability for stratification, for different forms of housing, and that's one of the reasons I kind of don't support the motion amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
Yeah, I just want to say, Your Worship, that if I recall correctly, the intent of those people on PNAC who wanted duplexes allowed, it was strictly done on the basis of the question of density. Correct me, Councillor Greaves, if I thought you were there. On the basis of density. So from that point, if two single-family homes with a secondary suite, they equal the duplex, so it's not going to make any difference, and it would keep the people at NOCA as happy as I'd like to keep them. But in any case, that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, Ms. Harrison, could we just get you to read the amendment so we're fresh on that before we go on the main motion?
I just need to get some clarification. I'm assuming that we're adding item 1C.
1C, correct.
That would exclude duplexes from corner lots.
Yes.
That is the amendment.
No. Sorry.
Okay, so no further questions on the amendment. All those in favor? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so defeated on a tie.
All right, it was a good try.
So, Ms. Harrison, do you agree? Not. Okay, so on the main motion now, I'm not going to read it again, but it's the printed one in front of you. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. Sorry.
That's okay. I did have an original question on that. So just a question to staff. With the intensive residential development permit area, how long will it take to create that? And in the interim of it being developed, what happens to the properties that are in limbo in the meantime?
Your Worship, the design guidelines that you're referring to are ones that will likely run through the Development Process Review Committee. There's quite a substantial change to how we would look at assessing developments. So that's the time frame will be a little bit more extended because of that review. However, there's existing development permit guidelines that are in place now to deal with the city-wide as well as the downtown. So it's a whole new philosophy on how to actually evaluate development design in the city.
So not to get into debate, Your Worship, but if I might just ask a follow-up question then, with the advent of the Development Process Review Committee, might that allow the process to actually be expedited versus take longer?
That will be something that we'll look at with the committee. The guidelines in their current form aren't ready for the committee, so I don't expect they'll be ready for a month or two before we can get them there.
Could we make this a late item on tomorrow morning's DPRC meeting?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the recommendation on the floor. Question on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into RA 296 at 2046 Boxwood Road. Staff recommendation that council receive the report pertaining to the zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.013, which is presented under the bylaws section of the agenda. Someone want to move? Is there a seconder? Second. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Zoning property maintenance. Property maintenance bylaw 1990, number 3704. It's requested that council herein wishing to speak with respect to property maintenance at the properties listed below. Staff recommendation that council pursuant to property maintenance bylaw 1990, number 3704, direct the owners of the following properties. It's now property to remove the material listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. The first item has been pulled, and the second item is 198 Howard Avenue, derelict bus, derelict GMC pickup, derelict Jeep, car parts, and miscellaneous debris. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 198 Howard Avenue? And hearing none, if someone would like to move the staff recommendation.
So move staff recommendation.
Sorry?
Move staff recommendation for item 2.
Item 2, okay. Is there a seconder? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Nuisance property, 540 Halliburton Street. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the nuisance property at 540 Halliburton Street. Staff recommendation that council declare 540 Halliburton Street a nuisance pursuant to the nuisance abatement and cost recovery bylaw 2003 number 5645, and authorize staff to record and charge the municipal services, including police, required at this property to abate the nuisances. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to 540 Halliburton Street? Okay.
Move staff's recommendation.
Okay, moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're moving into unresolved building deficiencies. Notice on title, section 5.7. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies or illegal suites for the properties listed below. Staff recommendation that council by resolution instruct the manager of legislative services to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below at the Land, Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under section 5.7. 7 of the Community Charter. First property is 3333 Smugglers Hill Drive, illegal construction, finished basement to include a secondary suite, and convert carport to living space. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak to matters related to 3333 Smugglers Hill Drive? The second property is 1160 Beaufort Drive, illegal construction, finished basement to include a secondary suite. And in attendance who would like to speak to matters related to 1160 Beaufort Drive? The third property is 1480 Townsite Road, illegal construction and an accessory building. Anyone in attendance would like to speak to matters related to 1480 Townsite Road? And the final one is 438 Deering Street, illegal construction, finished basement to include a secondary suite. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to speak to matters related to 438 Deering Street? Seeing none, if somebody would like to move the staff recommendation on that? Moved and seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Subdivision approval, park and cash in lieu at 3198 Singleton Roads, SUB 00528. Staff recommendation of council approve the payment of cash in lieu of park for the fee simple subdivision of lands described as that part of Lot 19, Section 5, Wellington District, Plan 9339, lying to the south of a boundary joining points on the westerly and easterly boundaries of said lot, distant 192 feet and 192 feet respectively from the southwest and southeast and southwest corners of said lot at 3198 Singleton Road. I'm just a little bit surprised we're not into metric on this one, but there's undoubtedly a valid reason for it. Someone like to move that one?
Move staff's recommendation.
Seconder?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to refer you to page 94 of the blue pages and to the next one after that, where you can see that through this property, 3198 Singleton Road, runs a creek, which is either Departure Creek or it is a tributary to Departure Creek. I'm not sure which. But if you then go to the next page, which shows the subdivision in 4 lots fanning out from the far right, I should say from the east, right now that I have an indicator. I'm getting there. So my concern is on lot 5, and I just want to make sure that we have the 15 meters on both sides of this creek, if that indeed is the creek. Please.
Your Worship, to Councillor Patchy, yes, we have 15-meter setback from the creek on either side. The whole subdivision's designed around protecting that creek and having those setbacks, and therefore over half the lot is included in lot 5 because of those setbacks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I see no further questions on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into corporate services, 2012-2016 financial plan bylaw. Staff recommendation that council receive the report pertaining to the financial plan bylaw 2012 number 7144, which is presented under the bylaws section of the agenda.
Your Worship?
Second. It'll come up later.
No, I'd like to make the motion now.
Okay, sure.
Yes. I'd like to move that the city increase the budget for cultural grants from $2 per capita to $2.30 per capita, a $26,398 increase in grant funding, and that the additional funding be allocated to the symphony.
Second the motion.
Okay. We have a few questions here that this is on the amendment. This is an amendment you're making?
Yes, this is for the bylaw, before we proceed with the bylaw.
Yeah, okay. That Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to be speaking against this motion, and not because I'm not a friend of the symphony. Currently, we've got about, my calculations, about 750,000 or 770,000 going to arts and culture, 450,000 to the Port Theatre Society, 60,000 to the Symphony, and 60,000 to the Art Gallery, all 3 of which are looking for more money. The Port Theatre Society is looking for about another $100,000 a year, Symphony 25, and the Art Gallery is looking for a cost of living allowance for their efforts as well. My challenge is that I did get a call from Mrs. O'Rourke on Friday, and twice during the course of that conversation I asked the question, how can we as a council help you help yourself? And to which there was no response. I asked the same question of the Port Theatre Society, how can we help you help yourself? I would like right now, we've got about $150 million of discretionary spending, and one of the things that bothers me significantly is the fact that our community is far from accessible. And if we're going to spend discretionary money on discretionary spending, I would like to see that money go towards accessibility options, such as better accessibility to the city hall. So I'm going to be voting against this. I believe that these groups, one leads to another, leads to another. I'm looking at requests this year for something close to about $130,000 or $140,000 in additional requests, and I just believe that the money would be better spent going into other initiatives, of which we have discretionary spending. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. If this motion were to pass, would this be in the budget for eternity?
Your Worship, I think that's the mover's intent, although I would seek direction on that. I think the intent is that that this be increased on a permanent basis.
That's correct, Your Worship.
So if I might just follow that up, so increase on a permanent basis and with the increase allocated to the amount of the current request on an annual basis, or that $2, the increase be available to any other ask from the cultural community at a future date.
Your Worship, and for the current year, I think it's pretty clear that Council's direction is to increase the symphony grant alone. I think that the cultural committee may want to weigh in on the future allocation of that money, but that would be subject to Council direction as well.
Well, with that, Your Worship, our Parks, Rec and Culture budget is in the millions of dollars, and I, for one, have to think that somewhere within our Parks, Recreation and Culture budget there is $20,000 of money that could be redirected if the Parks, Recreation and Culture Department so chose. And I also believe that we have considerable amount of money in our reserves. And to continue to go back to the community, and this is not a large sum of money in its singular ask, but we have countless asks that are similar to this that just continue to add up and add up and add up. And I, for one, believe that if we look hard enough, that we don't have to go back to the taxpayer and ask them for more money for this particular endeavor and many others. If we just dig a little deeper and reallocate and spend a little wiser from some of our reserves that the taxpayers have already contributed to this and many other operations that are in financial peril given the economy and other reasons. But I have to believe that there's money there that we have available to us that will not add even a small burden on our current taxpayers. So for those reasons, Your Worship, I will not be able to support this.
Okay, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Vancouver Island Symphony has been in existence for 16 years. They have a huge core of community volunteers that work countless hours to ensure the success of the symphony for the benefit of all taxpayers. They not only pay rental space at the art gallery or the Center for the Arts, they contribute to a huge amount of money to parking and the parkade. The Parks, Recreation and Culture Commission looked at 3 proposals, Your Worship. One was to make the symphony a line item, as is the art gallery, and they're a professional company. They also recommended that they receive this 30-cent per capita, and as you recall, the $2 per capita was assigned about 7 years ago as a recommendation from the late Larry McNabb in his wisdom to show that he had, as a sports enthusiast, the recognition that culture was very, very important to our community. 30 cents per capita isn't a lot, and I know it's $26,000 more on the budget, but I believe that the symphony contribute far more than that to the local economy. When we asked the question of the Vancouver Island Symphony's Board of Directors when they came to make their presentation, what would we lose? What would happen if they didn't receive this money? And all the community programs, without exception, the free programs that the Symphony puts on for our youth, for our university students, for School District 68, the concerts in the park, 8 community concerts. They provide opportunities for people that don't have the means to attend the Symphony at 7, if they come at 7 o'clock. And as late patrons, they can come for $5. They have special programs for noteworthy kids, ambassador clubs. It goes on and on. Not only is the Symphony an organization to themselves, but many of the local choirs are able to sing with that symphony and have that professional experience. And it's designated, and I want it designated to the Symphony. And my colleague, Councillor Bestwick, asked a very good question. But this year, there was over $365,000 in requests for cultural grants, and we had in our cultural fund $170,000. So a lot of people were denied the amount of money that they were looking for. So I think that's all I have to speak to that.
Okay. Well, for my part, and Councillor Pecci will be speaking too, I will support it. I think the people who work there and volunteer their time do a tremendous job, and it's a balance. And I think Councillor Bestwick's point is taken, that what should we allow, what should we disallow? But I just think that I know a number of the people that volunteer a lot of time in making this happen, and it'd be a shame to lose it, and accordingly I'll be supporting the motion. Councillor Pecci.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be speaking in favour of the motion for reasons that my colleague John Stone has mentioned already. I do vividly remember the executive of the Vancouver Island Symphony coming before the Commission, and I remember asking them, what will you do if you don't get this? And they went straight to this long page of 17 items, I think they were, that are so extremely valid and valuable to our community that I just have a really difficult time accepting that one would not see the value of that in a way that would allow us to increase this from $2 to $2.30 per capita. That said, I also want you to know that when you do a comparison and you look at what similar communities in this province pay with taxpayers' money for things cultural, quote unquote, then we are definitely at the very low end. We're almost bottom. So I think it would behoove us to, in a very difficult time, as all these cultural institutions find themselves right now, that we would go the extra step to make sure that we don't lose. Because once it's gone, you won't get it back.
Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I don't think we should really be targeting. I'm not a symphony person, but it's a wonderful organization. I know that from the information that I've received. We've been contributing to all the other organizations this year, but I do think we need to take a hard look at the money we're spending on the organizations and what they do. Remember the trickle-down effect, and I think the symphony money, a lot of it goes to the Port Theatre because they rent the Port Theatre. So I think it's a small price to pay. But again, I'll be supporting this, but I think we have to take a better look at it next year.
Okay, I see no further questions, so let's move ahead with the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor McKay. Councillor Beswick, are you opposed? Yes. Sir. Sorry, Councillor Beswick and Councillor McKay opposed. Balance of council in favor. I think that's right. And the motion passes. We'll move into... Sorry? Yeah, that was the one we started on earlier there, that staff recommends the council receive the report pertaining to the financial plan bylaw 2012, number 7144, which is presented in the bylaw section of the agenda. Councillor Kipp, you moved that, did you? Is there... Okay, and there's a second. All those in favor? It's like pulling teeth here. Okay, motion passes. So we're moving into information items. Report from Mr. B. Anderson, Manager of Community Planning, VIHA food strategy. Then there's a report from Mr. Churchill, the bylaw, and a report from Mr. Anderson. Someone would like to move the information items? So moved. Moved and second. Any business arising? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into reconsideration of bylaws, and this is being moved by Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.009 RA 283 to rezone 2171 Salmon Road from single dwelling residential R1 to duplex residential R4 in order to allow construction of 2 units on the lot pass third reading.
Is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. No discussion? Okay, go ahead.
This is one of the issues that I have with, this is a duplex, and of course, it's forming a range of housing in the area, but it's 3 duplex placed right next to each other. We typically don't have any rules. We used to have rules that was 1 duplex, and there couldn't be one within a certain length or area of each other. And I think that goes to the point of sometimes we're getting a mix of housing here because across the street and that. So I support this one in particular, but I'm starting to say we're starting to put a lot of density external to some of our real core growth areas. And I remember Calgary used to put a dot in the center of town, put a circle out, and until they filled in that area, they didn't put anything outside. We've seemingly started to spread our density across the community. And I support this, but it's seeming like now, this is the 3rd one in the row in that area we've done within about 2 years. So one comes and the next and the next. So it'd be nice to know if they would line up, and if this whole rest of the next block over, 191 King Road, is slated for the same stuff. Do we know? There's been no applications. I'll say, what? No application. Thank you.
Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going into the next on B.
It's that zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.010 RA 284 to rezone 5412 Gibbons Road from single dwelling residential R1 to duplex residential R4 in order to allow construction of 2 units on the lot past 3rd reading.
Seconder? Moved and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.011 RA 285 to rezone 5341 Dunster Road from single dwelling residential R1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 in order to allow a 2-lot subdivision past 3rd reading.
Is there a seconder? No fighting, no fighting. So you did get a seconder, did you, out of that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion. Are you opposed, or are you just stretching? So the motion passes. Introduction of bylaw. And do you want to carry on with the...
Yes, Your Worship, and I'd just like to remind Council that they're now to replace the pages of page 114, Schedule A, with the new bylaw that you have in front of you.
That's it.
Yeah. I think you've all received one. Introduction of bylaws at the Financial Plan Bylaw 2012, number 7144, to confirm and adopt the financial plan past first reading.
Seconder? Is there a seconder? Oh, thank you. I see Councillor Patsy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question to staff. We don't have to pass much of anything until May the 15th, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to make sure that the public knows that we still have ample opportunity to have input and to make changes before fourth reading. And I also would like to have a little bit of explanation from you on why it is important so that you can start expending funds from the 2012 budget, which you could not do without these three readings if they pass.
Well, just to clarify the process, it is on for three readings today, but it'll be on for adoption next meeting. But having said that, the budget is subject to amendment up until May 15th if Council chooses to amend it. Certainly staff will in all likelihood be bringing forward recommendations for amendments sometime in April to reflect new information and final assessment data. So at that time, Council could make more changes to the budget if it so desired. Having said that, though, I think it's an important step for Council to give three readings this week to the budget and adopt it at its next meeting, because it is February already, and it provides direction to the staff to get on with the plans in the budget, to get on with the capital works, and delay really just means that the plans that we've worked so hard to create are just that much more difficult to complete. So I do think it's important that Council indicate that it supports the plan, and that gives an indication to staff to get moving on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. By virtue of not giving three readings tonight, and by not adopting the budget at its next following opportunity, what projects are we not proceeding with in the absence of passing this in May? Or April, May?
Well, Your Worship, at some point, if Council isn't going to support the budget, we're going to have to rethink about what Council would support. And Council's had probably at least a dozen meetings on the budget, and there hasn't been any direction for change other than the changes that everybody's already aware of. So I would ask the question that if the budget isn't supported today, what is going to change in order to get Council support? And the next logical thing that I would think about is that we need to put our plans on hold because Council isn't supporting the budget, and it sends a message that there's uncertainty. And I can't tell you what we'd stop, but I'd certainly have a meeting with staff and discuss how we go ahead. And I think the message that we would hear from Council is that we really need to look at putting things on hold until we get direction from Council.
Thank you. And so given that there still will be changes, that staff will be looking at to bring back the real blended and the real budget, would you anticipate the proposed increase to the proposed numbers that we know today to increase between now and the time that new information is provided?
It's difficult to tell, Your Worship. We normally bring forward, and I'm sure we will again this year, amendments to reflect final assessment data and final year-end information related to the close of the previous year and final surplus numbers. So those will have an impact on the budget, but whether they impact taxation directly, I really can't say right now. I think that the changes are likely to be relatively minor from what we know today. And I just want to add that the blended tax increase of 2.8% that we're looking at today, we know that 1% of that is caused by the new City Hall service annex that's under construction right now. We also know that over 1% of it is caused by the increase in staffing resources that Council's providing to the RCMP and related support staff. So the actual increase that's related to our existing services is below 1%, which actually means, given the rate of inflation and the cost increases that the city's experienced for wages and other things, it actually means that this budget is a contraction budget over the previous year. So that if Council does want to make cuts, I would say to you that that likely means service cuts. And we can certainly look at service cuts. And I think Council, in its many hours that it's spent looking at the budget already, has not made any decisions to make any service cuts. So that's the next step if that's what Council wants to do.
And thank you, Mr. Kenny, and thank you, Your Worship, for allowing me to speak to this. My last question, what is our anticipated surplus for 2012 that we're operating under then?
The year end hasn't been completed yet. Our forecast, I think, is that it's in the 1 to 2 million range. I'm not, we're just not there yet. So as soon as we know, we'll be providing a report to Council on the surplus and the estimated disposition of that surplus.
Thank you.
Mr. Kenny, just a quick question. Is it not normally that about this time of year, about the middle of February, where the budgets are brought forward so that staff has a certain idea of where Council is going? I think this first, second, and third reading is done typically in the month of February.
Yeah, or Your Worship, or even earlier. The process was a bit late starting this year because of the election, and that the staff didn't bring forward the draft budget until after the election, so it was a bit of a late start. So I think that if anything, we're late.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm making is this is unusual to do it at this time of year. Okay, it's been moved and seconded on. Sorry,
Kip is out of the room.
Strategy.
It's okay.
Well, let's just, unless it's critical, we'll ask for, let's have a vote on it. All those in favor? Opposed?
That financial plan bylaw 2012, number 7144, passed second reading.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. I see no questions on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That financial plan bylaw 2012, number 7144, passed third reading.
Seconder? Second. Okay, I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The introduction of development bylaws?
Your Worship, I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.012, to reinstate zoning regulations omitted in error when bylaw 4000 was replaced with bylaw 4500 to provide further clarification to existing regulations or definitions and to correct minor typographical errors past first reading.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.012, passed second reading.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.13, RA 286, to rezone 2046 Boxwood Road from high-tech industrial 13 to light industrial 12 in order to permit the use of food and beverage processing, passed first reading.
I think that's I3 and I12.
I3, sorry.
Okay. Second. Moved and seconded. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't ask the question at the time of earlier when it was brought up, but because I knew we would be dealing with it. Could I just ask the question of what the food and beverage processing, what it means?
Yes, Your Worship. The proposal is for a production brewery to be established on this site.
And so does the zoning permit sales on site?
The processing is allowing small level of off-site sales, I believe, under the liquor licensing arrangement.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Your Worship, that zoning amendment, oh, have we voted on that one?
No. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And that zoning amendment bylaw 2012, number 4500.013, pass second reading.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Correspondence. We have just one. If someone would like to move the correspondence, and then we can discuss it. Yep, you're there. But the correspondence is a letter that was dated February 4th, 2012, from Ms. Christy Timos. Is that correct pronunciation? Timos. Sorry. Access Nanaimo Initiative requesting that due to the issues of access to the second floor of the City Hall building, all public meetings be moved to a City Hall boardroom to another meeting place that can be safely and independently accessed by all citizens. And I might just mention that Christy came and did an inspection of the City Hall not that long ago, and she went through a number of the issues, and it's a valid point as far as I'm concerned. So maybe if we would, I think maybe Councillor Anderson maybe want to make a motion at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since the election campaign ended, one of the things I said I was going to do is try to get as many people to attend these council meetings and our financial policy of the whole meetings and many other meetings. So I put out to the Twitter universe. I'm not a twit, though, just to let you know. But I put it out there, and I invited people to our council meeting and then subsequently a financial policy of the whole meeting, and I received a message saying that City Hall wasn't accessible, that the Garavanta, which would carry someone who's in a wheelchair up the stairs, wasn't adequate to carry mobility aids, and I don't think that's very good that we would have these types of meetings, which were supposed to be open to the entire community, and that it would be excluding a certain group of people. So I do have a motion, and I would move that Council direct staff to draft a report providing options for moving all public meetings from the City Hall boardroom to another meeting place that can be safely and independently accessed by citizens until such a time as the boardroom in the new City Annex building is completed.
Seconder? Okay. Okay. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Ms. Timas. Having worked with Ms. Timas on Access Nanaimo for the last 3 years, it is really ironic that someone like herself cannot come to finance and committee of the whole meetings in the boardroom. So apologies for that. While I will support Councillor Anderson's motion, I do wonder, though, if there is not another temporary solution that we might ask staff to look into and see if we cannot use some transfer device to, for instance, get yourself on the equipment that we have right now at City Hall. The problem, as you so succinctly wrote in your letter to us, is that the platform that we have in City Hall that goes along the stairways is of such dimensions that it would carry you, but it would not carry your mobility aid, and that you would have to be separated in order to get up. While we're in the process of constructing a new annex, and while there are going to be some changes made to the City Hall portion in which the boardroom is. I'm wondering if there is not something that we can come up with that's innovative and will get us a solution, a temporary solution. And I'm talking about keeping meetings in the boardroom because it is close to the annex and it is close to where the action is. I'm not sure what that solution would be, or even if it would be acceptable. I'd certainly like to have a discussion on it.
Just for clarification, it was my understanding that Councillor Anderson had suggested that the staff simply look at these things, and I think it's the same thing.
Yes, Councillor Patchy, in my motion it says exactly to draft a report providing options for moving all public meetings from the City Hall boardroom, but that report from staff could also include new innovative ways to keep meetings in the boardroom, and I'm just asking that they provide a report for us to make a decision upon that.
As long as that is part of it.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Okay. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Bishop. Just one question to staff. With the advent of the new annex, is a boardroom form part that would allow for people to attend? Is there a boardroom being constructed in the new annex?
Your Worship, there is a boardroom being designed in the new annex, which would be a little bit larger than the existing one, but also at grade.
Thank you.
But I would assume all these options would be reviewed by staff, and the workable ones would be brought forward, and those that don't wouldn't be, I guess. But, okay, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say thank you to Christy for kicking us in the butt all the time about accessibility. We concern ourselves with occupying Nanaimo, and this young person and many others want to occupy our buildings to come and get involved, and I think we really have to work on accessibility. I know there's other issues brought up by them that are hugely important that we have to move forward on. In the letter from Christy, it even mentions that more people are getting to the 65 plus. Getting up and down stairs is harder, everything, so we need to be into thinking of universal design and putting that into place so it is easy for everyone to access our building. Thank you, Christy, for your work. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, just picking on that, I think it was about a year and a half ago, Christy, we a number of us, I know Councillor Patchy was there, and maybe Councillor Johnson, some of the others here, we were, and you were there perhaps, Councillor Kipp, and we went to the Aquatic Centre there, and there was a number of wheelchairs available to us to try the grades around there. And I have to tell you that I sort of thought that I was in relatively good shape trying to go to the gym 3 days a week. And man, oh man, I had trouble with a lot of those grades there. And then a lot of them didn't have lowered curbs to get off. So it really makes you aware of how important it is to have access and egress for everyone. And I just want to add my thank you to Christy for relentlessly beating on us whenever we go wrong on that thing. But thank you. We have Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for coming and attending all these meetings. I know it's daunting at times. My question is, was it always anticipated that when the new annex is built that we would then move our FPCOW meetings to the new annex?
Your Worship, there has been no specific council direction on that. In the new annex, though, we are building a new boardroom that could accommodate Finance and Policy Committee of the whole. So council will have the option of having the meetings there. The upstairs of the old City Hall is planned for renovation to accommodate one of the departments in the city. So if council wants to meet other than here for the committee of the whole, our recommendation would certainly be in the new building.
If I may, is the new meeting room over there in the new building, is it on the ground floor? Or
yes.
It is on the ground floor, okay.
And of course, there'll be an elevator in the entire building.
Yeah. That's okay. So, I think on Councillor Anderson's motion, I think we're there, aren't we now? Sorry? Yeah, we're now to do. That's where we are to vote. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move into, actually, right straight all the way down to question period for agenda items only.
Excuse me, Your Worship. We did have Mr. Kenneth Pierce under delegations pertaining to items not on the agenda, so we should confirm if he is here.
Okay. Is Mr. Pierce here? Mr. Ken Pierce? No? So he is not. So, welcome, sir. You're speaking on behalf of Mr. Pierce, are you?
It's question period because he's not here.
Oh, okay. Different subject.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Could I ask, in regards to page 86 and declaring a property a nuisance property, what is the magic number for calls to the property? Like this works out to an average of 2 calls per month.
Yeah. I don't know if there is an actual number.
Well, I would certainly say that 49 calls for service over the past 2 years constitutes a significant number and worthy of being designated a nuisance, in my opinion.
Thank you. I would congratulate staff in this attempt. I know that there's over 500 calls to Halliburton Street last year alone for the RCMP. I also know that another property had 50 calls in 1 year. Why would it not be fair to that property to declare it a nuisance property as well?
Your Worship, I can't speak to those as I don't know the particulars, but I can speak to this one, which I do, and I believe that 49 is an awful lot of calls for the RCMP to attend.
Well, who would reply with the 49 calls to start with?
I didn't understand the question. Who would what?
Who would provide you with the information of 49 calls to start this initiative?
It would be discussed at the staff level.
RCMP level?
RCMP and staff together.
Why would they not discuss other properties on the same street that have got twice as many calls?
I'm certain they probably have. I just don't know the details, Your Worship.
Oh, but in fairness, if they got twice as many calls, they should be the nuisance property and not at a cost to the taxpayer.
Well, maybe if you want to provide the information that you have to staff, and they can discuss it with the RCMP, and then maybe we can follow up with it too.
I have it in writing from the RCMP.
Okay, as I say, you know, if you can provide it to staff, we'll certainly look into it, Mr. Taylor. No question about that. I don't have an answer for you.
My next question, please, is council aware in a request by, I think it was Mr. Anderson, to have your court case on your internet? Are they aware it's on the BC government webpage under court registry judgments? It's all there. And even if you so wish to follow Mr. Anderson's request, you could just put a little note where it all is of any case, all cases in BC. And my final question is, I raised question about the adoption of 4500, which was to me new directions to everybody, including staff. What's the answer about control of containers? Is that the direction, or have you got more things in the background we don't know about after the adoption of 4500? Is there a council direction to enforce our bylaws?
Well, is there any update from staff on the container question that has been raised?
Not that I'm aware of, Your Worship. The current situation is that council has chosen to accept the use of containers in certain circumstances.
In bylaw 4500, yeah. So why can we not get enforcement? Why is the staff sitting back waiting for you people to move?
Go ahead.
Well, the bylaw is in place, but we did get lobbied by many industrial and
one.
Well,
he stood here. I can name them. One.
I have more than one. More have one to talk to me. Westwood
but
Metals.
If he come to the public hearings at 4500 and they didn't, they had the opportunity.
But what I will say is
that was 6 months before bylaw 4,500.
We had a concern with one originally when it was put forward that they didn't allow emergency services stuff, so that got entered into it.
That was concerned with his friend in sheet metal business.
Yeah, and the second one was that people felt, and they're all over in the industrial areas, that they were a form of storage and a form of the ability for people to carry on their business.
Free accommodation. Free.
Exactly what it was, cheap accommodation.
I'd like to put a portable toilet with a couple around for rooms and no taxes.
Put outdoor clotheslines too, but that doesn't always work. But my feeling with it is I don't think it's like storage, outside storage, and they're protecting their products. During the high price of metals were getting stolen all over town, and some of the business people felt they were protecting their interests.
And we're getting lots of empty warehouses where people can go and buy a new one, bigger, or build, add on, or whatever.
They could do
golden opportunity to make more taxes, more going around it. Thank you. So it's enforced.
I'm kind of enjoying this, but thank you, Mr. Taylor. Now, anyone else want to deal with questions on the agenda items only? Welcome, sir.
Yes. I just wanted to check what legal principle or principle of equity is involved in demanding or representing that taxpayers should be fully responsible for downzonings, but not fully justified in taking all of the increase brought about by an upzoning or subdivision.
In relation to what? To my comment earlier?
I'm interested in whatever principle we're using that says in the one case of downzoning, taxpayers are responsible for paying, but in the case where council has provided an upzoning or a rezoning, the taxpayers are not fully compensated for the value that they have created.
I can speak.
Okay, great.
I think what Mr. Boland's getting at is, for an example, right now, if we said if we have that residential land zoned in the Lindley Valley and we downzoned it, there would be a cost attached to us downzoning. But if we took agricultural land and upzoned it to C17, which goes from 1,000 an acre to 10,000 an acre, why does the city not benefit on that?
Exactly. In fact, the case is, why didn't we benefit when we took off the zone that was on that allowed it to be developed at all?
Your Worship, this probably isn't a good forum for legal advice, but I think I can say pretty clearly that if council was to downzone that property to agriculture with the clear intent of purchasing it for or setting it aside for public use, it wouldn't take the courts too long to figure out that that was an inappropriate use of power and that the landowners required full compensation.
I don't disagree. That's not my point. My point is when we are giving away by a council decision significant upzone increased value to land, why in that same instance
can you give us an example of what we're giving away? Give us an example.
Well, I think Councilman Kipp already gave an example.
If we give a zoning, we only take $1,000 for what I called our extraction money all the time, or if we do upzone a piece of property so it goes from a residential 1 lot to a residential 5 and increases the density and increases value, we only take a portion or ask for a little bit of money on that.
I just assumed you're talking about Lindley Valley, but you're not.
I would say a better case might be what's now Ocean View. It was purchased, I think, for about $2.5 million. They may have spent $500,000 to $1 million to go through the process of getting it into resort category, and they've been trying to flog it at least for over $50 million. That means an increase of from, say, $3 to $3.5 million to $55 million if they get it. That was created simply because you and staff signed a document that said we're going to let you do this.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand the point.
So I think we need to consider if we're going to look in this direction by charging taxpayers, we also owe it to them to look at how we're going to increase the take.
They do pay more taxes. Anyway, we've got another question for Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Boland.
Yes.
Are we talking about uplift, or am I confused?
I don't know what I call it. I suppose you could say it's uplift. I'm not sure what that definition actually means. I'm just saying that a decision makes a change to value. It can decrease that value. It can increase that value. And if we're going to say that that value should be compensated on either way, then it should be compensated either way fully or either way partially, but not fully on one side and very minimally on the other.
I hear you. Thank you.
Just for signing a document, that's all really happened.
Do we want to do this?
I just want to ask.
Okay, we have one more for you.
Are you aware of any jurisdictions that do that?
No, I'm not.
Just your idea.
We could be a first again. We've been a first in a number of areas. This might be another one.
Interesting point. Thank you, Mr. Boland. Okay, I see no further questions, so in that case...
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Is this to do with the agenda, sir? This is question period, so it's questions on the agenda.
Yes, it is.
No statements, questions on the agenda.
In regards to your budget adoption, I'm wondering if City Council would consider that if you have an overage, a surplus from the existing budget that's carrying forward, that City Council look at doing a 50-50 sharing with groups that are asking for funding from you on the basis of that fund arrangement I already explained to City Council back December 19th. If they raise 50% and you put in 50%, put it into a permanent fund for the smallest organization first. Interest less inflation on what city administration and yourselves and the organization consider to be the highest return, so that funding goes from not begging every year, but from apportionate increasing over time, coming from their own funding source. That takes them off your bill and off the property taxes for everybody. Okay. Second item was on the Occupy. I would ask that City Council consider having a liaison with the organization, because now that they're involved with the Council of Canadians and their annual general meeting that's coming here in October, and now that they have 7 hours on national radio every week, it would be nice to have input from Council on, or even in the newsletter that they've started up, on positions and things that are coming up with Council. Okay?
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to make the motion then? Oh, sorry.
So in the funds spent on Occupy the Namo, if they were true, you being City Council, what would you prefer they be spent on?
Sorry, what was the question? I don't think we understood.
If the funding spent on Occupy the Namo were true, you guys being City Council, what would you guys prefer the funds being spent on?
Maybe. Well, we have a...
Your Worship, I hesitate to say this, but I think to say if it were true is insulting in the extreme. These are expenditures that have clearly been made. The invoices can be provided. To say that they're not true is an interesting comment.
And I never said that they weren't true. I was just saying if they were true. I never disagreed.
If they were true, it means that they are not true.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have something you want to go with? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, as you said, if it were true, is not the correct wording to use. I think there's also the thing that is left out of that report of the $24,000 that was spent, the amount of staff time that was also put in to occupy Nanaimo, which could escalate the costs well over, I would say, $50,000 maybe, you guys get paid a lot, so just kidding. But anyways, I would say that the amount that that staff has said is an accurate number, and that I think that the city and myself as a city councillor would continue to use those funds to do what's best for the community and to have removed Occupy Nanaimo from Diana Krall Plaza.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Hi there, Matthew O'Donnell. I do have a question. It's actually more of a question to the city. The report that was submitted by Randy Churchill about the financial costs incurred by Occupy Nanaimo, the legal costs are pretty exact, to the cent. The other costs associated on that list are really bulk numbers. It seems like they've been rounded either up or down. I would like to make a request to the city, or a question to the city actually. Would it not be fair to provide all invoices, all extra expenses, all the information that essentially you guys used to come up with these numbers, and provide them all publicly, not just to Occupy Nanaimo, but to all of the taxpayers of Nanaimo, because it is tax money. And in that case, if it is so insulting that someone would insinuate that the numbers were hyperinflated, maybe you guys could provide some backup with your words by providing invoices and bills to show where, for instance, a $4,000 tally is exactly $4,000, not $3,000.
I think that information is available, isn't it?
We can certainly provide any information that the delegation requests, although I suspect that he will still not believe it's correct.
I would actually I find that insulting, because I would absolutely believe it if I saw it. What I wouldn't believe is just bulk round up numbers.
Mr.
like what
Chair,
you
I would like to call a point of order on that. I
apologize.
There's supposed to be a question. This is question period.
The question was to request that information to the public, not just to myself who would be requesting, but just to make it public to everybody.
Okay.
And I have a comment as well, Mr. Chair. It says $4,000 for porta potties, $850 for overtime, $250 for garbage bags / tape and miscellaneous supplies for removal, $18,954.10. I think those are pretty accurate numbers. If they wanted to have inflated those numbers, they should have made it $25,000 altogether.
Well, Councillor Anderson, the problem that I have with this is Ted Swaby was quoted in the Nanaimo Daily News saying that the cost would go around $60,000. I spoke to someone within the bylaw department about a week ago who told me that the numbers would be around $40,000. And now, it's good that it's down to $24,000. But
I think the point is here that what we've been doing is trying to estimate staff time. And I don't know that anyone's been able to sit down and work out how many hours of staff time.
Well, respectfully, the staff time is only $800 in overtime costs.
Oh, no, the direct ones, but there's a lot of indirect times. I don't even know how many times I had meetings in the mayor's office, and there was a huge number of meetings that city staff had as well amongst themselves.
You, sir, are paid on salary, and I'm sure a lot of your staff are as well. You're not paid hourly.
Your worship, point of order once again. There's no question here, I think, that...
We're dealing with the cost to the city to do it. The city does pay, obviously, these costs, but we're saying, what I might suggest you do is take a trip down to city, and I'm sure we could get the invoices and you can go over them if you feel there's something that's inappropriate.
To the city, and I'm not questioning one way or the other, but I'm just, I do call it into suspicion considering the $4,000. I mean, just reading in the newspaper halfway through Occupy.
Your worship, point of order once again.
Of course, Councillor Anderson, no problem.
The question that he's asked is whether or not staff can provide a report, and I think that's about it.
Hi.
Good evening, Council. My name is Amanda. I saw on the agenda about snow removal. Maybe it's a question to the staff. Is there a bylaw regarding snow removal?
Yeah, I guess the gentleman who had the concern about it didn't show up, so I don't know. He raised it, not us, obviously, and this Mr. Pierce apparently did say he wanted to come and speak to us regarding snow clearing on city sidewalks and traffic islands, but because he didn't show up, we don't know exactly what his concern was.
Can I make a quick statement? As a mommy of 3 kids that have no car and I push my stroller, it's extremely difficult to go and get groceries when it snows. And I grew up in Calgary, and they have a 24-hour rule. If you don't clear your sidewalks, the city will come and do it. It's a great way to add jobs.
Okay, good point.
All. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if there's nobody else that wants to be heard. Welcome, sir.
Pardon?
I said welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. Just a quick question. Did the city anticipate the $18,000 some odd that was going to be spent on legal costs when they passed the motion or shortly thereafter to incur the legal action against Occupy Nanaimo?
I think they probably had, I guess when I say they, staff, probably had a guesstimate of what it would be. Anytime you get involved with litigation, it's always expensive.
So the $10,000 fines that were attempted to be levied on myself and Matthew O'Donnell were an attempt from the city to pay for the fines without having the taxpayers to do it for them in the case that they didn't. Of course,
that's a legal matter, and I don't know if we want to get into it.
It's a question directed towards the city then. Would that be why the city attempted to levy $10,000 on myself and a separate one on Matthew O'Donnell?
I can't speak to that. Yeah. We don't know that. But, we probably could get a letter from the lawyer. It won't be free, but we could get a legal opinion on why that was done in that manner.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Hello. My name is Mike McCrate. I've drawn up a couple questions here to whoever can answer them. My first question is, what opportunities did our city bring to our expensive negotiations to making sound expenditures pre-$18,954?
I don't think I understand the question. This is on the budget you're talking about tonight? These questions are agenda items only?
Yeah.
And you're asking about what?
The negotiations before the $18,000, what opportunities were provided before the $19,000 debt for the city taxpayers?
What opportunities? Well, there was a number of opportunities where we sat down with Occupy Nanaimo and asked them what their plans were to leave, and this took place at a huge number of meetings. And when
negotiations, not
what?
The negotiations. I believe in the negotiations there was only one topic brought up, and that was when.
Yeah, that's right. That was the exact topic. You're right.
And I believe the negotiations were to provide a prominent future for both ends.
Could be.
As a negotiation should be.
Could do. Valid point.
So were there any opportunities provided?
No.
Okay. Number two.
Well, there were opportunities, but the opportunity we were discussing was based on the fact that there was an illegal occupation of Diana Krall Plaza, and we were asking when it would come to an end. And we had an early indication that there was a timeline. We were working with that. The timeline came and passed. Nothing happened. We had another timeline. It passed. And finally, we said, listen, we can't go on forever. And if you don't want to leave voluntarily, then we have no other choice but to do litigation. And when no other choice is forthcoming from Occupy Nanaimo, we use the last option, which is a very regrettable one, and it costs a great deal of money to the taxpayers. And personally, I'm disappointed it happened that way, but I don't see any other alternative.
And I feel that wasn't a negotiation, that was a question.
You can feel anything you want, that's fair, but I disagree with you.
Okay, thank you. Number two, when the city of Nanaimo and Occupy were negotiating productive futures, why weren't the city financial concerns made transparent? We are in a financial crisis.
Yeah.
Why wasn't this brought into the table before we spent $19,000 on a court injunction?
Well, then I have to only assume that you thought we'd be able to go to court for nothing? Is that the presumption?
I just believe that perhaps the money could have been put towards better causes. And
so did we.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a person here, this side of the table, that wanted to spend $19,000 taxpayers' dollars.
And it's unfortunate we couldn't negotiate that.
I agree that.
Number three, What purpose did the Occupy movement issues become priority, and why were these distracting or inverting tasks for the city?
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the main reason is that there were structures in Diana Krall Plaza, and the bylaw said that there cannot be structures in the plaza. So the city went ahead and moved forward with that, and unfortunately they had to go through a litigation process which asked the people in Diana Krall Plaza to vacate. So it's all about the structures within the plaza.
And I guess if they had been voluntarily removed, which we'd ask time and time and time and time again for you to remove them, Occupy Nanaimo, and if you had, you would have saved the taxpayers $19,000. You choose to not to do it.
We both could have worked on that.
We both could have worked on it, but you're asking me what happened after the fact, and I'm telling you what happened in the fact. Today, we could have worked on it, hopefully, but we didn't do it that way, and we wanted the buildings moved. They weren't moved, and that was our last chance. It cost a lot of money.
It was the last chance, but we did try and bring to negotiations a possibility for space so we wouldn't have to occupy Diana Krall Plaza.
Oh, there was no space available.
And that was moved off the table. Even though we were willing to repair,
well, you're dealing with something that's already passed.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
I'll let you speak,
There's
John.
no question.
Okay, more questions. Do you have any more questions?
Yes, I have a couple. For what purpose did the Occupy movement issues become... Oh, I already asked that one.
What did he say?
Can you move on?
Oh, yes, okay. Are they numbered?
Okay. What financial benefit did bringing your local Occupy to court become a sound idea?
Say it again.
What? At what time? What was the question?
I'll repeat the question. Sorry, I'm not used to mics.
When did it become a sound idea?
Oh, okay.
We were getting a lot of complaints from some of the local businesses. So there was the Occupy group, and there was other people within the community, the business association, and a number of people that were on the other side of it were saying, complaining. They wanted Occupy out in the first week. They didn't want them there during Halloween or nothing. We had a lot of debates in camera and discussed a lot of different options ourselves and how things were going in that. We did let Occupy run a lot longer than a lot of other people, but it became, for us, we have to make decisions on all the input of all the people. We vote on those decisions. Not everybody votes the same way on issues, but we discussed it in length. We debated it quite adamantly on a lot of points on what we were doing and where we were going. I don't think any of us wanted to spend the money on what I believe wastes. It would have been nice to be able to negotiate, but it just didn't work out. And we thought at one point, we went on for how many weeks? How many weeks was the whole process?
It was 55 days.
7 weeks about, yeah. And we debated and talked during that time and hoped that, and I'm one that said, I don't mind the tents and stuff there, but the council view was that it was to be removed.
My last question would be, would City Council still be willing to work with Occupy Nanaimo on future problems?
Oh, I think
concerns,
open to
communal problems.
Look at anything, absolutely.
Okay.
As long as it's not dealing with bringing structures back to... no camping in Diana Krall Plaza, but I mean, we're not going to revisit what we've been through, but if there's some other new topic, we'd certainly bring it forward.
All right, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a seconder? We stand adjourned.
Some of the houses here, they're just our little feathered friends that are out in the garden, but you can hear them singing, and that's a lovely thing to hear in the mornings.
One display allows you to hear and identify the songs of different birds. And if you see one and want to learn more about it, the page number can be found on a book on site.
This is a great exhibit to have around. Just helps people to understand the birds that are locally in their backyards, what's seen around on the water, in the woods, in the parks where they go for their daily walks. There's a lot of different things. We hear about birds and see certain things, but you never get to see them up close where you get the great colors and features of the birds.
And for Tom Sweezy, the eagle section is of special interest.
This exhibit is interesting to me because my sister passed away 26 years ago, and on the day she passed away, an eagle by the name of Ray Queen was named after her. It really hits home with me, the emotional ties between the eagle and my sister. The Nanaimo Museum has done a great job in Nanaimo, and bringing in this exhibit is it's very powerful, it's very moving and nice.
The exhibit runs until May 30th, and in addition, you can take part in urban bird tours and a nature photography contest. Contact the museum for more details on dates and times. In Nanaimo for Shaw TV, I'm Melissa Hall.
Little Valley Quality Assured Collision Good News is brought to you by Little Valley Quality Assured Collision.
Canada has always been a nation of trailblazers. Long before the first Europeans arrived, there were paths, trails, and waterways that wound their way all across our majestic landscape. The fur trade created even more routes, ultimately culminating in a network of trails, portages, rivers, and lakes that joined two oceans. In time, narrow ribbons of steel would unite our new country, only to be followed by highways of asphalt and gravel. But those early trails that had been carved by the First Nations, voyageurs, explorers, settlers, and the railways will always have a romance that 4 lanes of blacktop could never match. And then, in 1992, a magnificent vision was born: to take the hundreds of trails and paths, roadways and unused rail lines that twisted across our country, and make them one. And that was the beginning of one of the most ambitious and iconic undertakings in the history of our country, the Trans-Canada Trail.
The Trans-Canada Trail is the longest and grandest recreational trail in the world. And now an ad hoc group of local trail enthusiasts are working at connecting the TCT through Cedar and Yellow Point.
Sorry, each dot represents a potential route, is that right?
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different options to expand the Trans-Canada Trail.
It's beautiful and it's exciting, really. We've got the Morden Colliery Trail opportunity here, which is a promised route by the regional district. We've got the Harmac Pipeline and that option, and we have a lot of local rights-of-ways and trails that are being already used by people and local groups, and we're just looking at linking them all together.
And so far, everyone they've talked to about the idea seems to be in favor. The biggest challenge in connecting the existing section of the Trans-Canada Trail to trails that already exist in this area is the Nanaimo River.
Darn that river.
But there are options for that are being looked at. Goody Nyosi is a local author, blogger, and trail enthusiast who's working towards getting the TCT to run through Cedar and Yellow Point in time for the trail's 150th anniversary and completion deadline in 2017.
All the trails feed into the center of Cedar Village, so that's going to be lovely for the coffee shops, for the grocery store, and just for a more cosmopolitan flavor in the Cedar Village. I think that's going to be nice for it, and I just think it's going to be nice to up that whole profile of Cedar as a supernatural place to be, because it's about nature.
We're here at Morden Mine Trail next to the Nanaimo River, and the ad hoc group that is trying to connect the Trans-Canada Trail through Cedar and Yellow Point says that one of the most appealing aspects of the route is the nature's close proximity to our history.
They like the heritage, and they certainly want the natural route. You know, they don't want to go through roads. And so the cycling, equestrian, and walking is the primary route. And we see the Trans-Canada Trail as kind of the main highway of routes with a lot of connectors and offshoots from that.
Laurie used to be the Vancouver Island representative for the Trans-Canada Trail. He's encouraged by the opportunity he and his group sees here.
So the heritage and cultural values are all here, and we think people will be pumped on that, you know, from the Trans-Canada Trail and all those visitors. It's a beautiful, historic area, logging, mining, and the opportunity is there to bring people out locally as well as bring people in nationally.
It's an old artifact of some sort. I think what we're doing is right in keeping with the whole green revolution we're seeing. We're providing a green, ecologically sound transportation corridor.
Discussions to bring the Trans-Canada Trail through Cedar and Yellow Point are in the early stages, but the ad hoc group advocating for it say it's just a matter of how, not if. In Cedar, for Shaw TV, I'm Kate Bergen.
You have an open invitation to come and share in something that is truly unique. The Trans-Canada Trail. Your pathway to endless possibilities of discovery.
Sprott Shaw Community College's Higher Learning is brought to you by Sprott Shaw Community College at sprottshaw.com.
Normally the spa is a sanctuary for relaxation, but today I don't get to relax. I get a look at what it's like to be an absolute spa esthetician.
Melanie's task today to see if she has what it takes to work at one of Vancouver's best spas.
My name is Sally Sue, and I've been an esthetician at the Absolute Spa for 5.5 years.
I'm a true girly girl. I love nails and hair and going to the spa and feeling great after. I do not think it's going to be relaxing working at the spa.
The great goal of being an esthetician is to make sure that the client's having a great time and just to relax.
Her first task, the manicure.
I do not have a steady hand. I might paint outside the lines.
Take a look at her hands, and just take a look at her fingernails.
A little uneven, so maybe we'll even them out.
If you could just keep them on the shorter side.
You never want to seesaw back and forth because that can cause breakage on the nails.
Okay. I actually think I made it look worse. Ooh. Oh, that one's a little sensitive. Sorry. Uh-oh. I'll do better on the next one. I don't know if anyone at Absolute Spa knows this yet, but you know some people have a foot fetish? I actually think I have a foot phobia.
So you want to put on gloves so that if they have any fungus.
Toe fungus?
Or if your guest's toenail is actually lifting or if there's debris coming out, you do smell the debris. It's not very pleasant. Take a look at her feet. Make sure she doesn't have any fungus or whatnot around the foot. You actually do have to fully go in just like that. Now we're using these nail clippers. I'm sure you've used them before. Everyone has different sized toenails and nails and whatnot. So
even the word toenail.
A lot of people don't know that they're actually ticklish until they come in to do a pedicure. She is actually doing quite well in the pedicure. I'm actually quite surprised. I didn't even expect her to touch the feet at all.
So my feet phobia continues.
With the pedicure proving to be a bit of a challenge, Melanie tries her hand at a relaxation massage.
So we're going to start with full body massage. We're going to...
pretty tattoo. How do you like the pressure?
Maybe a little deeper.
Our guest seemed relaxed, I think.
Melanie's actually doing kind of windshield movements, but what she wants to do or needs to do is do full body movements, long, big strokes.
So with the manicure, pedicure, and massage complete, can the spa goer make it as an esthetician?
So, Sally, would you hire or would you fire me?
I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to fire you.
Really?
Yes. I fired Melanie because she's better as a customer than an actual esthetician. Melanie's definitely been really willing to learn, so maybe in the future. we'll hire her.
Just a little off the top, please. Thanks. When it comes to spa treatments, I prefer getting them than giving them.
Sprott Shaw Community College's Higher Learning has been brought to you by Sprott Shaw Community College at sprottshaw.com.
Community programming on Shaw has been generously sponsored in part by
Joe Cunningham Ford. Joe Cunningham Ford, located on the East Island Highway in downtown Parksville.
WHL Hockey is live on Shaw. Watch Friday, February 17th when the Prince George Cougars return to their old stomping grounds on Vancouver Island for a battle with the Victoria Royals. WHL Hockey, only on Shaw.
Alberni Automatic Transmission. Servicing and repairing all makes and models for over 40 years. Nanaimo's Transmission Specialist. Alberni Automatic Transmission. Downtown on Cliff Street.
Thank you very much.
Well, the pressure's on. Why is that, you ask? Because of this. Valentine's Day is almost here, and I believe my wife thinks that I'm losing my romantic spark. For example, look what happened last year.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Aw, you should have.
It's a picture of me.
Really? Todd, you're losing your romantic spark.
All right, so maybe I'm losing some of my romantic flair, but I think I can get it back. There's one thing in life that's never steered me wrong, and that's the movies. What if I find some of the most romantic movies ever made and immerse myself in those films? Maybe then I can learn how to wow my wife this Valentine's. But there's only one problem. I don't watch romantic films. Where do I begin?
We're going to start at the very beginning from 1934 Columbia Pictures classic, It Happened One Night, starring Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert, who were loaned to the studio and went on to win the Oscar for Best Actor and Best Actress. This is considered the first ever romantic comedy, and it's a story about an upper-class woman who is escaping her trappings, and she is followed by a reporter who pretends not to know who she is, and the more time they spend at each other's company, the more likely that the sparks will fly.
Movie number one, here we go. Perhaps you're interested in how a man undresses. Funny thing about that, quite the interesting study in psychology. No two men are alike. I once knew a man who wore his hat until he was completely undressed. That's right. Years later, his secret came out. He wore a toupee. That's right. And me, I have methods all of my own. First, you might notice I started with my sweater, then my tie, now my shirt. According to Hoyle, the next thing is my pants. But that's where I'm completely different. Me, I go for the shoes. First my left, then my right. Now, it's every man for himself. All right, what did we learn from this movie? Romantic tip number one, get undressed in front of your wife. I can do that. So, what's next?
Our next selection comes from the 1970s, and this is the classic Love Story. This was a huge box office success in the 70s, and they actually had police barricades to stop the roar of crowds from going in. This was Ryan O'Neal and Ali MacGraw's epic tale, and there is an element of tragedy within the story, but it is a classic tale, and that has the tagline, "Love means never having to say you're sorry."
Movie number two, let's go!
I forgot my key.
Jenny, I'm sorry.
Don't. That means never having to say you're sorry.
What did we learn from Love Story? Well, an interesting tip for number two, never say you're sorry. Might be challenging for me, but I'll give it a shot.
Our next selection is from the 80s, and this is an action-adventure, escapist romantic film starring Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas. This is Romancing the Stone. It's about a romance writer, Joan Wilder, played by Kathleen Turner, who has to go to South America in order to save her sister, and she gets involved in a romance with Michael Douglas, who is a ruthless traitor and a bit of a scallywag, and of course they have a lot of passion and romance and adventure together.
Looking forward to movie number three.
Do you want to know what's crazy?
What?
I don't even know your name.
Well, you've never asked.
Excuse me, but I'd really like to know.
Colton. Jack T. Colton.
What does the T stand for?
Trustworthy. Romantic tip number 3 from this movie is be a man of mystery. I'm feeling more romantic already, baby.
If you're looking for alternative fare and you don't like the mainstream choices, a movie like
Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels
is exactly the movie you're looking for.
One of the funniest movies ever made. I like you, Mary. I like you a lot. I'm going to flat out and ask you something. And I want you to answer me honestly. What do you think the chances are a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
Oh, Lloyd, it's difficult to say. I mean, we hardly...
Hit me with it. Give it to me straight. I drove a long way to see you, Mary. The least you can do is level with me. What do you think my chances are?
Not good.
Not good as in like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're saying there's a chance? Yeah!
Cut! I didn't recommend Dumb and Dumber. I'd never recommend that. I recommended Garden State. Besides, your wife hates that film.
He's right. She does hate that film. So what else you got?
And now we get to the elephant in the room. The Hallmark card of films, an epic chick flick, The Notebook, starring Ryan Gosling and the lovely Rachel McAdams. This is the one to watch for Valentine's Day, year in and year out. This will make you weep with joy, weep with sadness, and every man should be legally required to have to see this film. It's wonderful.
Film number 5, The Notebook. Let's go. Don't you take the easy way out.
What easy way? There is no easy way. No matter what I do, somebody gets hurt.
Would you stop thinking about what everybody wants? Stop thinking what I want, what he wants, what your parents want. What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want? Dang it, what do you want?
I have to go.
Where is she going? To the bathroom? I have no idea what I'm supposed to learn from this movie.
Todd, just take this movie home, put it in your DVD player, and watch it with your wife. You'll know what I mean. You'll need a pack of these to go with it.
Thanks. Let's give it a shot.
What easy way? There is no easy way. No matter what I do, somebody gets hurt.
Would you stop thinking about what everyone wants? Stop thinking about what I want, what he wants, what your parents want.
It's so sweet of you to rent this movie for me.
I've always wanted to watch this movie.
What do you want?
With you.
What do you want? What do you want?
What are you doing?
I have to go.
Nothing. Why?
You just knocked over my popcorn.
Yeah, and I'm not sorry about it either.
I'm going to bed.
So, what do you think the chances are of me and you tonight?
1 in a billion.
So you're saying there's a chance? Reporting for Shaw TV, I'm Todd Jones.
Don't get the weights, you son of a... I'm wearing shoes. Can I take my shoes off? Let's get out of here. Yeah. Welcome once again to this edition of Fuel. I'm with the lady who puts the fit in fitness, Misty Allen, and I guess I put the tub and tubby, right, Misty? Today, what are we working on today, Misty Allen? We're working on weight training?
We are doing weight training, also known as resistance training. We're going to hit some weights.
Okay.
We're going to do some tubing, some cables, use the ball. There's lots of different ways you can
Are
do
we building
resistance training.
building? What are we, weights, cables?
We're building this building.
This temple, is that
Yes,
what we're building?
that's right. Normally we would do certain muscle groups we would focus on per training session. But today we're going to touch a little bit of all the muscle groups, and you're going to kind of get a flavor of different ways to work all the muscles.
Okay, and then after that I'll be posing with you on the shows.
Absolutely, that's right.
Let's go try it out.
All right, sounds good.
Well, in the past, I got to say my weight training was minimal. It was, it ranged from pushing the lawnmower to, getting a pint and a chicken wing kind of in succession, rotating, doing reps of that.
Bring one leg down here, and you're going to bring it here, and exhale and push. Try to lower your leg down a little bit more. It'll make it a little harder.
You mean back towards my body a bit more?
Yeah, towards your chest.
I find the gut gets in the way, all right.
He's got some strength, but his core is weaker, so we need to teach him to strengthen his core, isolate his core as he's doing the exercises. Okay, now let's try lifting your toes.